Hello, I'm Ara Najarian, Mayor of the City of Glendale. I am pleased to announce the launch of ElNinoReady.org. I am sure you've heard that El Nino is forecasted to be one of the strongest on record this year. There is an extraordinary amount of rain that will likely cause flooding. So, what has the city done to get ready? The cities of Glendale, Burbank, and Pasadena have partnered on an education campaign and created a new website. You can learn how to use a sandbag, how to protect your home and pets, and how to register for storm alerts. Let's be El Nino ready. Log on to elninoready.org and follow us on Twitter at Verdugo Alert for updates as they become available. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 12th, 2016 meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have the roll call, please?
Council members Devine?
Here.
Friedman?
Here.
Garpetian?
Here.
Sinanian? Mayor Najarian?
Here. Councilmember Friedman, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
I invite you to please rise and join me in saluting our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation. The 18th century Irish novelist and Anglican clergyman Lawrence Sterne observed that, quote, respect for ourselves guides our morals, and respect for others is what guides our manners. On the eve of the first council meeting of the 2016 year, let us all pray for a year that brings us health, prosperity, and above all, blesses us with dignity and respect for ourselves and our neighbors. We pray for the strength and conviction to face obstacles that we will undoubtedly confront and with these blessings overcome. We pray for our brave servicemen and servicewomen who protect our country while serving in our armed forces. Pray for their safe return home to their families. As always, we pray for peace in all parts of the world, including here at home. May helping others share the spirit of harmony and peace be our highest goal this evening and always. Amen.
Thank you. May we have your report, please?
Agenda for the January 12, 2016 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council is posted on Thursday, January 7, 2016 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And the next item.
Presentation and appointments at 3A is agenda previews for the meetings of Tuesday, January 19, 2016, and this will be a short announcement because for January 19th, the regular Housing Authority and City Council meetings have been canceled. There was to be a Glendale City Council work boot Tuesday on the 19th. That has been postponed. For anyone who wants more information, they may do so, receive the information by calling 818-548-4844. Again, that number is 818-548-4844, and we will put up a graphic for the public to get more information on that. This was intended to be a workbook Tuesday, as you can tell from the graphic, about transportation and the Beeline, and we will be letting the public know when it will be coming back.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item, please.
3B is a proclamation designating Korean American Day.
Thank you, gentlemen from the Korean American Foundation and from our Korean American community. Please come forward.
Good evening, everybody. My name is T.C. Kim. I've been serving as the Korean American Foundation of Glendale's president for the past 3 years. Thank you for allowing us to participate in this proclamation ceremony. This year marks a special year. It marks 113 years of Korean American immigration to the United States. And apparently, that day is January 13. 113. It's a special year for us Korean Americans. And I'm here throughout the United States. There are 48 chapters of Korean American Foundation. We all celebrate in separate ways. We're here to celebrate with you in the Glendale City. Today I'm joined by our friends from Korean American Federation of North Los Angeles. I'm sure some of you are very good friends here. We're all part of Glendaleans. Most of us lived here for a very long time. I personally lived here for 23 years. And we are proud, and we love this city. We're proud to be residents in this city. And I believe that we are continuing to be a thriving and vibrant community in Glendale. And we appreciate this opportunity, and we want to continue to strengthen the diversity in the city and continue to work with you to improve the city. And thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. And I do have a proclamation for you. Whereas Glendale and its adjacent cities are home to approximately 700,000 Korean Americans, the largest concentration of Koreans outside the Korean Peninsula, and whereas the history of Korean immigration to America began as 102 courageous Korean men, women, and children ventured across the vast Pacific Ocean aboard the SS Gaelic to land in Hawaii on January 13th, 1903, And whereas they did not falter in their pursuit of the American dream, but through tenacious effort and sacrifice, established a new home in a new land and educated their Korean American children. And whereas in search of better opportunities for their children, beginning in the 1970s, a multitude of dynamic Koreans joined the increasing flow of immigration to the United States, and with diligence, fortitude, and a strong belief in the American dream, these immigrants turned depressed areas into thriving communities and raised their children as productive Korean Americans. And as the community enters a new era and creates new history, we must instill in the upcoming generations proper appreciation for the courage and value of their ancestors, a deep sense of their roots, and pride in their own cultural heritage, so that they may better contribute to this great nation, rich with ethnic and cultural diversity. Now, I, Ara Najarian, proclaim January 13th, 2016, as the 13th anniversary of Korean American Day. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And the next item, please.
Next item is the Rosie Award presentations.
Mr. Dan Bell, always nice to see you.
There you go. All right, you have the plaques already. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, and staff. Thank you. I'm here representing the Rosie Award Selection Committee, and I must thank the other members of that from the union representation. Gail Stockton from GCEA, Laura Stotler from GMA, Jason Ross from GPOA, Chris Stavros from GFFA, and myself representing EHRC. We're honored to present these winners to you tonight. We have two of them present, and one, unfortunately, is not able to join us. But we'll get right into it. As you know, the employees are nominated by their coworkers and their peers. So it's a great honor and recognition from their coworkers to be recognized tonight. The Rosie Award is presented in honor of a former employee who unfortunately lost her life, Rosie Flores Griswalski. She was a city employee, if you did not know her, who devoted her life to serving others in caring and loving manner and exemplified the highest level of public service and customer service here in the city of Glendale. She was known as a person for helping the person first and the problem second. So she really exemplified what we try and do here in Glendale. As you might imagine, this is a tough task for our committee because we have so many wonderful employees, and I call them co-workers, so they are great. So let me get right into it here tonight. Our first Rosie Award recipient is Mr. Alfred Garcia, and I believe he is in the audience. I'll have him come up and join me here. Congratulations. Alfred, and I'll let you say a few words at the end here, but he works for GYA, Glendale Youth Alliance, and he's been here for over 20 years with the city of Glendale. As you know, GYA programs are designed to build civic values in youth, provide a foundation of learning, job skills, and becoming productive participants in the job force. One of his co-workers who nominated him wrote, "Alfred is known as the mentor of the Verdugo Job Center. He always makes himself available to those who are seeking out assistance." Another commented, "Alfred keeps a positive attitude and is committed to the city of Glendale by providing a high level of customer service to the community he serves." So I present to you Alfred Garcia, and I'll let him say a few words.
Thank you. I wasn't aware I was going to get this. I'm honored. I enjoy working for the city of Glendale. I think I came here in 1969 from Cuba, and since I was here, unfortunately, I moved away to Sunland, but I like it there too. But I got an opportunity to work in Glendale, and I took it, and since then, I've been here. I enjoy working here. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, I believe you have a commendation as well as a plaque there for Alfred.
Thank you, Alfred, for all your good work. You make us proud sitting up there that we've got great employees dedicated to our residents. Make Glendale the best city that it can be. There's a nice mayor's commendation and your Rosie Award crystal plaque. It's crystal? Or we say crystal. Nothing but the best. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So two more. So our second Rosie Award recipient tonight is from the police department, and that is Miss Jenny Lau. And as I mentioned, she is ill and unable to join us, but she was a unanimous choice for the committee. So I'll give a little background on her. Jenny Lau is a 26-year employee with the Glendale Police Department. She currently serves as a community service officer with Glendale Police Department. Jenny's nominating co-worker wrote, "Jenny always gives her all to every aspect of her position and goes the extra mile, often without being asked." Another statement from someone who nominated Jenny said she is dedicated to the Glendale Police Department, and she is an employee who constantly gives of her own personal time to help others in the community. She is always involved in the Cops for Kids program, the annual Christmas toy drive, and is instrumental in the Baker to Vegas relay run. As I mentioned, unfortunately, she's unable to join us tonight, but accepting on her behalf is Deputy Chief Carl Povolitis. So I'd like to welcome him up here.
I had a chance to talk to Jenny a few minutes this afternoon, and as I said, unfortunately, she can't be here because of some health issues that she's working through. But if you know Jenny, she's a very humble individual, and she was certainly humbled and honored by the award, and wanted to make sure that we said thank you to everybody on the nominating committee. But I can't think of a more deserving person, so we'll certainly make sure she gets the plaque and the mayor's commendation and get that out to her. So.
I've asked Councilmember Garpetian to present you the plaque on behalf of Jenny.
Congratulations. As I said, on behalf of Jenny, we thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, and last but certainly not least, from our Parks, Community Services and Parks Division, Sevag Gerbetian, I believe he is here in the room. He'd come join me. I'll wait for him to get up here. Sevag is a Community Services Supervisor with us. He's heads up, he kind of does it all for us. You see this guy running around town everywhere. Any events that we do, he's there doing something, making sure it all runs smooth. But I didn't nominate you. Other people did. But I love working with this guy. He's great. I will say one of the comments from a nominating coworker said that Sevag exemplifies exceptional customer service. He treats everyone in the same friendly manner. Yet another statement is to his dedication to our city, states that Sevag is a true team player. I can attest to that. And he is creative, engaged, and compassionate about improving the city of Glendale for all who live and work in our city. It's this kind of commitment that the city of Glendale that has made him a clear choice for this award. Our third recipient, Sevag Gerbetian. I'll let him say some words.
Thanks, Dan. Mr. Mayor, members of council, city staff, I wanted to thank the selection committee, my fellow coworkers who've enabled me the opportunity to help them or lead them in whatever we do at Pacific Community Center and in the department. It's truly their support that's enabled me to be here in front of you today. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, that concludes our presentation. But the committee does want to thank the mayor and city council for your support, management services staff as well. And again, we hope we can get a round of applause for these employees. Their job well done.
Thank you for your fine presentation, Mr. Bell. Someday I hope to be around when you're receiving your Rosie Award. Okay. No, thank you, Dan. You do good work. And the next item, please.
Item D is Mayor's Commendation for Ronnie Valtierra.
Yes. Ronnie, come forward, please. And Mr. Galanyan.
Good evening.
It's about this fine gentleman.
Right. Mr. Mayor, good evening, members of the council. It's moments like this that makes it all worthwhile and makes me very proud to be the director of a fantastic department, employees like Ronnie Valtierra, who provide on a daily basis exceptional customer service to our residents. And Ronnie is a shining example of all the dedicated employees we have in the department and throughout the city. But in his case, he's an integrated waste truck driver, and on one of his routes, there is an elderly gentleman with some health issues who is not able to push the trash cans all the way to the curb. And Ronnie, on a daily basis or anytime his route happened to be in that neighborhood, he would empty the cans, push it all the way to the gate so this gentleman wouldn't have to do it. This went on for months and months. He never told anybody about it. It was just part of what he does. That's part of his duties. Until the gentleman's daughter found out and asked him, who pushes these cans to the gate? And he said, I have no idea. It must be a fairy godfather or godmother, in his case, godfather. So she did some digging and found out, lo and behold, it was Ronnie. And she found out, she called his supervisor and complimented Ronnie for going the extra mile and for the exceptional customer service and the commitment to the city and its residents. So it's an honor for me to present you Ronnie Valtierra.
Come back up. We have a mayor's commendation, but your efforts are so special that I'm going to ask all my colleagues to come down and present you with the plaque, with the commendation, and get a picture.
All right. Even the
You probably from there, like where Tom is. No problem.
So kind and so compassionate. Doing great work.
Congratulations. Thank you. Ronnie, she's great work. Oh, thank you. Here, why don't you take that and turn around?
This is what Glendale's all about.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say I can't think of a better way to start the new year than to see all these fabulous staff members, employees that we have. It's
Absolutely
fantastic.
And let's go on to the next item, please.
Next item at 3E is appointment of board and commission members. This was the appointment of Councilmember Friedman. The nomination, rather, at 3E is 3E1 is the appointment of Arthur Devine to Civil Service Commission.
Yeah, continuing the theme of public service.
And starting you're on a good foot.
And you're on a good foot. I wanted to reappoint my appointee, Arthur Devine, to the Civil Service Commission. He is very well known in the community for being on pretty much every nonprofit board and always being there to support our nonprofits, support our community, and in this case, spend countless hours on one of our busiest and most time-intensive and difficult commissions. So I'd happy to reappoint him.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
I have to think about this one for a minute. Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Sinanian, Mayor Najarian.
Yes.
And while we're on nominations, I want to place into nomination for the Building and Fire Board of Appeals, Delilah Lanox. I will give you a full bio next time, but suffice it to say that she's extremely well qualified, having run a transportation and construction company for many years, and she's a member of a lot of construction-related commissions around Los Angeles, so someone who's extremely qualified to be on this board.
Okay, we'll put her on the agenda. Thank you. Next item, please.
Under consent items 4, the following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
Would someone like to move the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Let's take roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Sinanian, Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Thank you, everyone who came for consent items. Just take a moment.
There we go.
Next item, please.
Item 5 is City Council and staff comments.
Ms. Friedman.
First, Happy New Year to everybody. I hope everyone had a very nice holiday and New Year. There was something that I had mentioned a few months back to the city manager, and he was looking into it, but I wanted to bring it up publicly to let people know that the council understands some concerns and has some plans, but it actually relates to Shoal Canyon, which has been in the news a lot. And I know that one of the concerns for people living near the area are the trucks, the diesel and heavy trucks that go in and out of that canyon. And I would like to publicly ask that the city manager bring back a work plan to switch those vehicles, both, now I know that ours are, a lot of them are CNG, but the trucks coming in from the outside, to find a way of phasing out the diesel trucks and bringing in instead, or regulating completely the use of clean natural gas and electric vehicles as they become available on the marketplace, but certainly for the CNG. But I don't know if I need to have a second for that, but I think it's something that, in terms of air quality, there's really no excuse to not have all those vehicles be like the cities of Glendale's trucks, be CNG.
Question, Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Garpetian.
I agree with you, but is this something that we can enforce?
Well, he just needs. I'm just asking right now to bring that back to us. Bring us back a report. Bring us back the options, enforcement, all of that, so that we can have a fuller discussion. But that would be my goal, is to try to make it to where we mandate that all the trucks be CNG. But I need to hear back from staff about what's legally possible.
Okay. And just so I'm clear, you're not talking about Glen Oaks Boulevard. You're talking about.
I'm talking about the actual dump trucks that are going
to the dump.
To the dump.
Okay, is there a second on that?
I'll second
we'll
that.
let the city attorney ponder everything involved with regulating motor vehicles. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Ms. Devine?
Next, okay. I also want to wish everyone a Happy New Year. I want to say thanks to our Department of Water and Power and Public Works for handling the rain situation so beautifully. I know that a lot of the cities were without electricity for hours and hours, and ours was up and running in one instance, 5 minutes. My instance up in the hills was 45 minutes, which was satisfactory as far as I'm concerned. So I thank all of the staff that was a part of that workforce. I also have some more good news, and this will. I guess Mr. Duran already knows this, but our Glendale Parks and Open Space Foundation has been named the best organization or the organization of the year by the Montrose Verdugo City Chamber of Commerce. So I congratulate you. I think that's because of, a lot of it's because of the work that you do at Dumbajan Park. So that award will be given out on January 28th at the Oakmont Country Club. And finally, I would like to ask my fellow council members to approve my request for a staff report and to agendize a code amendment on the Mills Act. I'd like to suggest a Mills Act extension for the restoration of contributor homes in historic areas. This would incentivize the homeowners in restoring their homes. It could also improve the conditions of their contributor homes and increase the value of homes in the neighborhood. So I would like for staff to look into that and hopefully get support from my fellow council members. I'd also like the report to include non-contributors which could be restored as if they have the proper documentation.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Thank you. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like to wish everyone a Happy New Year as well. There are a few things I want to talk about. This has to do more with what we're doing at this time. Most of them are code changes. And one is the sign ordinance on high-rise buildings. Currently, either the first or second or third tenants can only have signs on the buildings, and sometimes they refuse to have one, or they don't want to have one, and the tenants on the higher levels cannot have a sign on the facade on the building. So I want to revisit that if possible. The other one is circular driveways. The code was changed from 60 to 8, having a driveway of 60 feet to 80 feet. I want to revisit that and see if, I don't know why it was changed, but I want to see if we can bring it back to 60 feet. If you have a 60 feet wide frontage, you can have a circular driveway. Also, I know we're working on small lot subdivisions. I'd like to get a report on that. And the last one is our condo conversion ordinance. I would like to revisit it and see what is going on with it and agendize it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I can get a second
Yeah,
on
happy
those.
to talk about all of those.
Okay. All right.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, one more thing. Can we bring these items back on a date certain?
We would ask that if we could report back to you how long we think it'll take to get some of these. Some would be ready much sooner, others maybe not so much. So we can report back and give you a date certain, probably at your next meeting.
All right, appreciate that. Thank you.
I would like to request that we close tonight's meeting in honor and in memory of two residents, longtime residents of the city. I would like to start with Ed Hunt. We have a graphic. Ed Hunt completed his remarkable journey through life on his terms, spending his last few days at home on Balboa Island, surrounded by the love of family and friends. True to form, he fought hard until the end and then passed on peacefully on the bright sunny morning of December 15th, 2015. He was 77 years young. Edward Spencer Hunt Jr. was born in Pasadena, California in 1938 to Spencer Hunt and Nancy Ellison Hunt. He spent his early years in El Monte and grew up in California. He graduated from Hoover High School in 1956 and Occidental College in 1960. The most important thing he did in high school was meet his lifelong love, Mary Ann Wood. They were married in 1958 and enjoyed 57 wonderful years of life and family and love. He worked his entire life in the packaging machinery industry, designing and building equipment used all over the U.S. and around the world. He was a natural-born engineer and entrepreneur. He started his career at Biner Ellison Manufacturing and for the past 30 years owned Lob Hunt Packaging Systems. He was a great boss and mentor to his staff. Ed is survived by his loving wife, Mary Ann Hunt, his son, Jeff Hunt, and his wife, Christina, and grandchildren, Hannah-Lynn Roan Hunt and Daniel Hunt, his son, Todd Hunt, his wife, Pam, and grandchildren, Taylor Hunt, Lauren Hunt, Austin Hunt, and Madison Hunt, his daughter, Linda Hunt Eddy, her husband, Park, and grandchildren, Elizabeth Eddy, Parker Eddy, Clara Eddy, and Hunter Eddy, and his brother, Steve Hunt, and sister, Julie Hunt Anderson. Ed's memorial service is on Friday, January 15th, 2016, 1 p.m. at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church in Newport Beach. In lieu of flowers, please consider a tax deductible donation in Ed's memory to World Vision. Make your checks payable to World Vision and mail to the Ed Hunt Memorial, P.O. Box 965, Montrose, California, 91021. And unfortunately, we also will be adjourning tonight's meeting in the passing of Elizabeth Doyle. Elizabeth Doyle was a former longtime Glendale resident who passed away on December 13th, 2015. Betty and her late husband, Mark Doyle, were very active members of the Glendale community for over 50 years and raised 8 sons in the Jewel City, including Glendale's Human Resources Director, Matt Doyle. Betty and Mark were active members of Holy Family Catholic Church in Glendale. She was artistic her entire life and continually worked on crafts for Holy Family and various charities, including the Cathy chapter of the City of Hope. She loved to play the organ, and many of her children and grandchildren inherited her musical and artistic talent. As the mother of 8, Betty worked hard and sacrificed much for her family, but always maintained great beauty, composure, patience, dignity, and class. Her family meant everything to her, and while all 8 of her children were boys, they all married. Thus, she was eventually blessed with 8 wonderful daughters and 17 grandchildren, many of whom live, work, and interact in our great city. We adjourn tonight's meeting also in memory of Elizabeth Betty Doyle. And I would like to let the community know that the holidays are still upon us. If you have neighbors who are Armenian and you see them celebrating with an unusual gusto tonight and tomorrow, it is the actual old calendar New Year's for Armenians. It's called Amanor. So I believe now, once the old calendar New Year's is celebrated, that will probably bring a close to all the celebrations of our holiday season. So to those who celebrate and observe the old calendar, Happy New Year's to you. Anything from staff?
Mr. Mayor, if I can, just
Yes.
by way of a question, I know actually all 4 of you, and including Mr. Sinanian, who is traveling on city business tonight, have asked, is with respect to Shoal Canyon landfill, because that has come up, and you know the EIR for that project is outstanding. We were expecting to have all of the comments answered and be brought back to you in January, February. It doesn't appear that that's going to happen. Particularly as a number of the comments are focusing on waste to energy, anaerobic digestion, and other alternative technologies, we are making sure that as we proceed with answering or making the response to all of the comments that have been submitted, that they are in alignment with the integrated resource plan that was brought before you by way of the Grayson power plant repowering. So there seems to be some information, very specific information from the Glen Oaks Canyon Homeowners newsletter that says this item will be back in front of you on the 26th. It will not be back in front of you on the 26th. The noticing for the information has not gone out. There's no way it could come back to you on the 26th of January. And in fact, my strong suspicion is that this is probably in the spring, if not later. So just hopefully to put some minds at ease that this is not. Yes, sir.
Scout's honor?
For somebody who was not a scout, if you will allow me the, if you will allow me that honor, yes, Scott's honor. It will not be coming back anytime in the forecasted agenda. It is literally springtime, end of the spring, early summer, somewhere in there.
Thank you. And if I can share, I think the sentiments of my colleagues that we want the analysis and the responses to be as thorough and complete as possible, because we obviously know that this is of concern to residents both in our city and in Los Angeles. And I think it's important that we do it right the first time, get as much information and analysis as possible, and then hold a meaningful discussion with the community.
Most definitely, sir. This has been almost a decade in the making to get to this part. At this point, I don't see us sprinting to any finish line today. So.
Thank you, Mr. Ochoa. Anything else from staff? Very well. Let's move on to the next item, please.
Item 6 is community event announcements. This is a period reserved for 3-minute community event announcements.
Thank you. I have a card from Tigrana Zakarian.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Najarian, City Council members, staff, and city management, and community members, of course. My name is Tigrana Zakarian, and I am the Outreach Director for the Armenian American Museum. First off, Happy New Year, and Happy Armenian New Year as well. I would like to give you a brief update on our community outreach efforts thus far. I am pleased to inform that we have met with the Kiwanis Club of Glendale on January 8th, and we have proceeded to have 2 community outreach forums for the community, which has attracted numerous residents and community members to attend and provide us with very valuable feedback, and we will proceed to do more outreach. On Sunday, January 17th, we will hold one more public forum at the St. Gregory Armenian Catholic Church at 2 p.m., and we welcome all community members and residents to attend, and please engage with us in the mission and the vision of the Armenian American Museum, and continue to give us your feedback and voice possible concerns you may have, and engage with us in that dialogue. We will also meet with the Glendale Board of Realtors, as well as present to the Glendale Community College this month and engage with various groups. And I must say, for those who would like to meet with us, whether they are individuals or they're a part of an organization or specific stakeholders, please reach out to us and engage with us on social media. The website is armenianamericanmuseum.org, and you can, of course, find us on Facebook and Twitter and engage with us in that regard. So thank you for your attention, and again, I wish you all a very happy New Year.
Thank you, Tigrana.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
Tigrana, can you give us the, I'm sorry, for those that are watching that don't know where St. Gregory's
Yes.
is, can you give an address?
Of course.
Time
It is located at 3229 North Verdugo Road. It is right next to the Glendale Community College. The zip code is 91208. Thank you.
I don't have any other cards for this portion of oral communications, so I will therefore close it and move on to the next item.
Item 8, action items. 8A is Director of Public Works regarding 2015 Glendale Pavement Management System Update. 8A1 is a motion to note and file.
Thank you. Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. As you assumed the mayorship, one of the things that you made very clear as we progressed into the budget year was that infrastructure maintenance would be the hallmark of your agenda as your year as mayor. As a result, you have noticed that we have been bringing back at our regular intervals updates on the multi-million-dollar projects, the investments being made in public infrastructure for the benefit of Glendale's residents and businesses, be they in GWP or in this case Public Works. Part of providing and making good on that commitment to preserve the public infrastructure is to ensure that we are keeping score, to ensure that we have an honest assessment as to what we're doing right and what we need to do more of to make sure that we do right in the future. So in addition to major projects that you have seen, like the rebuilding of the Grandview substation, the Chevy Chase sewer diversion project, we also have more pedestrian, not to make a pun, but pedestrian projects by way of our pavement management index. And so to the extent that we collect information, assess that information, we want to bring to you this report and file item that Mr. Golanian will bring forth that talks about our pavement management index and things to look for going forward. So with that.
Thank you, Mr. Golanian.
Thank you, Mr. Ochoa. Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. I'm pleased to present this update report on our pavement management system. So what does pavement management system do? It essentially provides a complete inventory of public roads indicating the current pavement conditions. It also provides a computerized listing of alternative pavement rehabilitation needs and the associated costs. I'd like to add that the program that we use was developed by American Public Works Association, and it's called MicroPaver. It's widely used in the industry. It also provides a priority and various budget scenarios for costing analysis. In addition to being a useful analytical tool for sorting and storing pavement data, it's also a requirement, it's a mandate by Federal Highway Administration to be eligible for certain federal funding, as well as the need for public agencies to provide a complete inventory every 5 years. The data is essentially collected in accordance with AASHTO guidelines. AASHTO stands for American Society of Highway and Transportation Officials, a very prestigious institution, and it's done by visual field inspection and is performed by an independent consultant for us. What's the Pavement Condition Index, commonly referred to as PCI, that we will refer to frequently in the presentation? It's a measure of where the pavement life is where the condition of the pavement is in its life cycle. Basically, 100 begins a brand new pavement and a new life cycle, and 0 would indicate virtually no remaining life. It also helps us determine different pavement rehabilitation types. So Glendale's most current in 2005, average pavement condition index rating was 73.8. And I'm proud to announce that it's classified as very good. We have 365 centerline miles of streets and alleys at an estimated replacement value of $385 million. That's a tremendous asset and a significant investment in infrastructure. The next few slides will show different PCI ratings and what the corresponding pavements look like, as well as a few pavement rehabilitation methods we typically use in Glendale. So streets with PCI between 86 and 100 are considered in excellent condition. This picture is taken of Glendale Avenue repavement that was done last year. Incidentally, we received the APWA award for the outstanding local street project on this project. There are no obvious signs of distress. There won't be any rehabilitation needed for at least 7 to 10 years on this roadway, or until the PCI has deteriorated to an 80 or less. Streets with a PCI between 71 and 80, these are considered in very good condition. That's what the overall street network in Glendale represents. As an example, Orange Street, current PCI is at 80. This street was repaved, resurfaced in 2005 just over 10 years ago. You don't see any major signs of visible distress. There may be some trenches and patchwork that's been done and present in the pavement. This will be a very good candidate for slurry sealing treatment. Streets with a PCI between 51 and 70, these are considered to be in fair to good condition. An example is Roberta Avenue. Current PCI is 60. You notice slight to moderate signs of distress, no rutting, and generally narrow or what's called hairline cracks and some alligator cracking. This is another good candidate for treatment with slurry seal, but at the lower end of the range at a PCI of 60. One conventional preventive maintenance effort that we deploy in the city of Glendale is slurry seal. It costs approximately 50 cents a square foot. It's a combination of oil and fine aggregates. It's applied to help preserve and protect the underlying pavement structure and provides a new driving surface. Typically, it should be placed every 7 to 10 years, like I mentioned, after repaving or resurfacing, or when the pavement has deteriorated to a PCI of around 80. But in Glendale, we generally use slurry seal treatment on streets with PCIs from 60 to 75 due to some funding challenges we've had recently.
One quick question.
Yes.
Sorry, one. This slurry seals, how thick are they? How thick is it?
It doesn't have a substantial thickness. It's essentially oil with very fine aggregate that just provides a thin coat on the surface.
Like a sealer, basically.
It's a sealer, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Streets with a PCI between 31 and 50, these are considered to be in poor to fair condition. An example is Pacific Avenue. The current PCI is 40. Thankfully, we have a project underway currently that will repave this entire street from Colorado to Glen Oaks Boulevard.
You might suspect, and you know from the budget process, to the extent that Mr. Galani is replacing sewer lines, we also target where we can overlap street projects, similarly with Mr. Zern's water and underground electrical projects.
Very good point. And on this particular project, the phase 1 included the replacement of the sewer line that we completed last year. In this picture, or on this street, we see obvious signs of distress that have reached a point that maintenance and preservation techniques don't effectively work. We have crack sealed the street to preserve the pavement until the time of resurfacing. That should be spring or summer of this year.
And when was this paved?
Originally?
Yeah. How long was it? Like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
Probably around 20, 25 years ago.
So the life expectancy is about between 15 to 20 years.
Council Member Garpetian, with our new rubberized asphalt pavement that I'll talk about, the typical increase in useful life is from 20 to 25 years.
As opposed to previously 15 to 20. So technology is helping out in a big way.
And on top of that, by applying...
exactly. So if we catch it every 7 to 10 years, we'll extend it that many years.
Got it.
Beyond the 25 years if we don't do anything to it.
Got it. Thank you.
So a conventional, very common street resurfacing method costs about $1.80 square foot. This is very common throughout the industry. It extends the useful life of the street, and it's more cost-effective than total reconstruction. It, generally speaking, it removes the existing top layer of the asphalt and places, like I said, a new rubberized surface course that lasts 20 to 25 years. This method is good, is a good candidate for PCIs between 40 and 60.
That's how you determine which streets?
Yes, Council Member Devine. Yes, that's how we determine. Now, to streets with a PCI between 0 and 30, these are obviously considered to be in poor to completely failed condition. An example is Mariposa Street that had a PCI of 20 recently. These are typically a good candidate for complete reconstruction. And the pavement, because the pavement has deteriorated to a point where resurfacing becomes too expensive, and regardless, the street can't perform properly due to subsurface failure. You can see here there are missing pieces of pavement and some settlement spots.
And what you sometimes see in these incidences where you find a street like that is, or a section of a street, we're waiting effectively for the rest of it to go, because to try to fix parts of it, addressing it street section by street section makes no sense. And so we're triaging these streets as we go. And if you have one that is in fail condition, we're better off to do the entire street. And so you let it go a little bit longer because, quite frankly, you can.
Do we have many of those?
Thank goodness. Well, go ahead.
We'll get to that.
I'm going to take over his presentation.
Thank goodness
we actually
don't.
love talking about this stuff.
I know, we go back and forth.
Shows you where.
And that's a very good point. So if a street pavement is at...
You got to see our staff meetings.
Open the bottles.
Sounds so fun.
So if a street pavement PCI rating is at 30, like Mr. Ochoa mentioned, it's not going to add to the cost of reconstruction if we let it go another 10 points. We keep an eye on it, we do patchwork, we do maintenance treatment, but we can get more bang for our bucks if we use that money elsewhere for maybe resurfacing, slurry seal, or other methods of treatment, as opposed to let's hit this at the PCI of 30, whereas we can wait and hit it at the PCI of 20 and have a larger length for the project to do. Street reconstruction method, as you can imagine, costs approximately $5.60 a square foot. These are streets with extreme base failures, and we use reconstruction when no other method can cost effectively prolong the pavement life. It consists of complete removal of the pavement and reinstallation of a new pavement section. Again, it's extremely costly, a very lengthy process, and a major inconvenience to the public. We try to avoid this as much as we can. A new method, treatment method that we have recently used in the last couple of years or so is called Cape Seal. This is a cost-effective method used in lieu of street reconstruction. It includes a heavy rubberized oil that fills the cracks as the first step, as the first layer, and the second layer is a rubber-coated 3/8-inch gravel, and then the last and the third layer is to cover it with slurry seal. This prevents essentially cracking and provides a smoother driving surface and a new appearance. This will prolong the life of a pavement, again, 7 to 10 years. This is an example of a Cape Seal treatment that we use on Mariposa. You saw it had a PCI of 30 before and after pictures. Another innovative repaving method that we have used in the last 3 years is called cold-in-place recycling. It costs approximately $2.50 a square foot. It's a cost-effective way to avoid reconstruction. We have managed to save $1.5 million using this method in the last 3 projects we've done, namely Central Avenue, Kenyatta Boulevard, and Glendale Avenue. And we also were able to reduce the construction period as well as eliminate some truck trips. It consists of milling the existing pavements 2 to 4 inches, then mixing the grindings with emulsion, it's oil-based emulsion, and then overlaying the recycled surface with new rubberized asphalt. All of this done with a single pass of a train of equipment. I'm not sure if you can see that clearly in the picture. A variation to this is called cold central plant recycling, We use this method on Central Avenue, which incidentally we received another award because of using this method and the cost savings. It's basically a mobile plant a few blocks away that processes the material before we place it back immediately on the roadway.
What do you mean processes the material? What does it do?
It takes the grindings, mixes it with the existing base, is milled. Traditionally, we used to import that material. Now we take the existing base, grind it, break it down, add emulsion to it, compact it, place it back into the same exact location.
All while that piece of equipment is just going
Moving.
right now. It's
Right,
very,
right,
very
right.
cool.
Yeah. It's just all in one, like
All
one
in
of those fax machines. It's a phone and a fax and a zero.
What's a fax machine?
Yeah, we still use. Some of us we still use it.
And before and after picture of Glendale Avenue. Now that we have completed our pavement 101, if there are no other questions, I'll move on to the findings of the pavement management report. Yes, ma'am.
One question, you probably know what I'm going to ask you. You want to guess? About water permeable pavement, and where we are with that.
I could have guessed that. We, at every opportunity we get, depending on the grade of the street, obviously, depending on the location, look at using permeable paving material.
So are we using it? Because I didn't see, I saw a lot of other materials in here, but I didn't see
Right.
water permeable material.
It's not one of the methods that's recommended by APWA. However, it doesn't mean that we have not used it and that we are not going to consider it when the appropriate locations come up in our pavement management system recommendation.
So as you know, I strongly believe that low-impact development, including our hardscape and our infrastructure, needs to be a priority for the city. So I would like to express that I hope that you use this material wherever you can, because now that it's raining, I think a lot of people are going to be very frustrated to see all that water going down the LA River and into the ocean, or going into the storm drains and out into the ocean, when we've got a perfectly good aquifer under our feet that is desperately in need of replenishing, and that's one way of getting a lot of water into the ground.
Absolutely, Councilmember Friedman. The technology has improved immensely when it comes to permeable pavements, and we have seen some good results. We don't have sufficient history, but I've seen some promising material that at least going to try out. And
as you do these reports yearly or quarterly, I'm going to keep asking.
Absolutely.
So what I'd like to see next time is a percentage of what you're using right now, and then the increase so the next time you come in with this report.
Sure.
And
I'm sorry. So just to report on that, we recently completed the Central Paseo improvement project, and the entire parking lot and the parking stalls were done in pavers that are permeable material.
Glad to hear it.
what is the price point for that, the permeable?
We have not, Councilmember Devine, we have not used permeable. The last time we used permeable pavement, it was in its infancy, the Isabel parking lot, and we had mixed results. We had to redo it. So we don't have recent data. We'll have to collect that from other agencies who've used it.
So it's not a common practice?
It's not a common practice. The city of Santa Monica, I visited last year, they have done alleys in permeable pavement and concrete that's holding up. They've done parking lots that we have done.
Is this like a new
research.
technology or new material?
It's not a new
used yet?
technology, but they're improving it as the need increases for percolation of water into our aquifer.
So it's a great idea. I mean,
It is, it's an excellent idea.
I've been to some of those trade exhibits, but isn't the whole purpose of a durability of a roadway to prevent water from seeping in the foundation, if you will, of the road? Because that would start to create pockets and that's in fact what causes potholes and stuff. So driveways and alleys and parking lots I can get, but on significantly traveled roadways, I think it would. Is there any evidence as to the durability of that stuff?
Mr. Mayor, that's a very good point, and that's where the price point comes into play. It becomes very expensive because water intrusion, as you noted, is a factor in deteriorating pavement, especially the base. So the base has to be also rehabilitated. That's what makes it more expensive. But again, I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but there are technologies out there. I've even heard of they engineer the pavements so that the pores are such that silts can go through them, so that it doesn't block the seepage of water. But these are technologies, very new technologies out there. We haven't experienced it firsthand. But we, like I said, we will look into the possibilities. And grades are very important in these situations.
What you may
report back.
Yes, sir. As we get closer into the budget and we look for a couple new and bigger ideas, water conservation is not going to go away. That's an issue that we're going to have to wrestle with, and some of the ways that are right in front of us that we could make long-term systemic changes towards conserving and conserving the water supply is either to build out the recycled water system that we have, so we're using more recycled water, or, as is suggested, find ways to capture water that's run off today. That may actually end up, both of these are going to be hundreds of millions of dollars. But I would venture a guess if we were to approach our community and say, here is a 100-year piece of infrastructure, can we finance it over a longer period of time with the interest of either expanding the dissemination of recycled water in a very reliable way, or trapping more water, feeding it back into the aquifer. That would be a game changer, and not something outside of the realm, beyond the realm and the capacity of City of Glendale. So you have given us the challenge. One of your priorities is sustainability and maintaining the infrastructure. Those two items get married on some of these big ideas that Rubik is talking about that will be before you as we get closer into the budget.
Okay, Rubik.
Okay, thank you. So based on the Pavement Management System recent report, in 2008, we had an average PCI rating of 73. In 2010, it went up to 74.6. And 2015, most recently, there was a slight decrease to 73.8. Again, this is classified as very good. As you can see, the comparison to the statewide average, they went from 68 to 66 and down to 60, which is their current statewide average pavement condition index, which is significantly lower than the City of Glendale's. It's worth to note that our neighbors, both City of Burbank and City of Pasadena's pavement condition index is 64, better than the state average, but again, much lower than the City of Glendale. And I attribute this success to the smart allocation of resources to create a cost-effective balance between preventive maintenance and more extensive pavement rehabilitation projects. This chart shows citywide pavement system condition distribution. In 2015, and the green bars show that 23% of our streets are in fair to good condition, and still 63% in very good to excellent condition. This is lower than 2010, basically, but it's primarily due to steady decline in gas tax funds that has hampered our ability to continue with our aggressive street paving projects. Putting it in another table, another way of showing it, this shows the percentage of our streets with the corresponding recommended rehabilitation methods and the number of miles. For example, the recommendation is that we need to resurface 66 miles. That represents 18.9% of our streets. Essentially, a quarter of our entire street system doesn't need to be touched at this point in time. This is a pavement life cycle chart that was developed many years ago by California Pavement Preservation Center that now has become industry standard. So for your information, to go from classification of very good to fair, there is a 40% drop in quality of pavement. And that represents a remaining 75% of useful life. If the cost to renovate the pavement at that point is $1, if we wait approximately, give or take, 3 years, there'll be another 40% drop in quality, and at that point it will cost $4, 4 times as much to get back to have a renovated pavement. Last but not least, this was generated by the Pavement Management System report. It shows that currently, in 2015, our pavement PCI, average PCI was 73.8. In order to maintain that level, that condition, we need $6 million. We need to spend $6 million annually on various pavement treatment methods. We are projected to receive $4.4 million this year in gas tax funds, so that leaves a balance of $1.6 million a year. If we were to attempt to increase the average PCI to 80, then we will need an additional $2.3 million a year. And if we don't do anything, the trend is downward, as you can see in this chart.
And so with funding sources from other levels of government really stagnant, you haven't seen increases. So certainly I don't think anything's going to happen at the federal level. The state seems poised to not engage in systemic ongoing funding. They're trying to shore up their own budget. And so I think a lot of this is going to rest back with Glendale, which actually is fine. I think to the extent that you look at who weathers that budget storm better than anyone else, it's going to be at that local level. So the point of the discussion going forward as we enter the budget season is ensuring that we're putting an adequate amount of money into this critical piece of infrastructure, because it's kind of a pay me now or pay me a lot more later. And what you'll see prioritized pursuant to council's direction has been to maintain that PCI at the 73.8, not to wait for the state, not to wait for the feds, but to do it ourselves.
Okay. Just want to understand this a little better, this very last portion. So 1.6 million to be 73 or 2.3 million to be 80.
Correct.
Is this on annual basis just for maintenance, or to keep it up to 80 or 73? Is that what it is for? Just maintaining all the roads? You need $2.3 million extra, or?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Garpetian, the additional, because we are projected to receive $4.4 million in gas tax funds, to be able to maintain the average. That doesn't mean that we can rehabilitate or have preventive maintenance treatments on all of our streets, the 365 miles. That doesn't mean that. It means we can strategically improve some of the streets, apply slurry seal, cape seal, some resurfacing, and maybe minor reconstruction projects to keep the average for the network, street network, at 73.8. We will need an additional $1.6 million a year for 5 years until the next update report.
And when you say average, what does that constitute? What percentage of the roads? Is it like 40%, 70%? I know you cannot go to every single street or alley to pave or slurry seal every single inch of the streets, but average is what percentage of the roads?
average percentage of streets that will be rehabilitated?
This $7 million, $6 to $8 million to keep the average streets, the average percentage of the streets from between 73 to 80%.
Sure. Councilmember Garpetian, so we need to slurry seal 52% of our streets between now and 5 years from now. Okay? So if we divide that up, maybe 10% of our streets will be slurry sealed in a given year. Another 19% of our streets need resurfacing, 5 years scenario. Another 5% reconstruction. So we can either do 5% of street reconstruction in 1 year, or we can spread it out depending on the length of the project, do 1% each year until we get to the point 5 years from now that we hire a consultant, they field investigate every street, and then they come up with the average for all of our street network.
Rubik, can you go back to slide 16? Because I think that one really gets to the meat of the question, and even the question that was asked earlier. If you look at those percentages of streets, divide them by 5, because this is a 5-year strategy that we're putting together. We'll be doing 10% of the streets, just quick, easy math, 10% of the streets will be slurry sealed. You'll have, on the reconstruction, 1% of the streets will be slurry sealed, 4% will be, reconstructed, 4% will be resurfaced. And so to the extent, and that will maintain that PCI. That will maintain us in the very good. But that means that going forward in the coming year's budget, as new monies come in, because, good Lord willing and the river don't rise, we are going to see and continue to see that uptick in revenues. Well, as you have dictated, we need to make sure that those new dollars going into infrastructure. And so that's why Rubik, being very strategic as he is, getting in front of you now in January, knowing that the budget process kicks off in the spring, to say he's going to come asking you for another 1.6 on top of the $4.4 million that we get in gas tax.
He's a good collector.
He is indeed. Yeah, it's just not a hat rack he's got there.
And can I ask, when you do bring this back for a budget, will you bring us an inventory of what needs to be done and then a work plan on how you intend to get that done?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Devine, we currently do have a 3-year program looking in the future. We have candidates that we've had them on the radar based on our previous payment management system. We'll definitely be able to add another 2 years and present it to you.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a motion to note and file. If someone will
so move
such a motion.
Second.
Mr. Mayor.
Mike Mohill.
I take my motion back, Mr. Mayor, until...
Oh, we haven't voted on it, so it's still...
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Najarian, council members. My name is Mike Mohill. I'm glad we're talking about the roads and the roads maintenance, because a few days ago I went over to DMV, over there on Western by Grandview. The roads there were crumbling. I went up side streets up to Cumberland, the Brockmont area. Those roads were crumbling also in beautiful neighborhoods. The crumbling roads are all over the city, not just in South Glendale, but even in the upscale neighborhoods of the city. Now, you mentioned that because there's been a drop in the sales tax, that's where we get our revenue for the roads. Well, about 10 years ago, 50% of the budget was road maintenance. 3-4 years ago, it was 16%, and today it's 0%. We count on grant funding to do our roads today. Now, I feel very, very fortunate that where I live in Glen Oaks Canyon, about a summer or two, the city resurfaced my whole neighborhood. Very fortunate. But in the neighborhood where the streets are not resurfaced on a very timely basis, we all know that crumbling roads devalue the property on people's homes. I'll say it again, devalue the properties and people's home. We do slurry coats. That's nothing Reconstruction, what, 18%, I think the gentleman said? That's nothing. We need more than 18%. Where is all this money going to? That's right, folks. It's being transferred out of road maintenance to the general fund to pay the $440 million unfunded pension obligations. That's where all our money is going every week. You can talk about the different methods of resurfacing the roads, but unless we have hard cash, we count on grant funding. Is that fair to the residents who pay taxes, that their money is being transferred out of their wallets to the city employees? Now, we all know there's a pension crisis in the city, but we know right now that the city is planning to sell the Civic Auditorium to the college because we need the money. Because we can take that money and fix our roads or pay the pensions. The crisis is today, not brought on by you, Mrs. Devine or Mr. Cup, but the two senior people who have been here long enough to know the budget process. When they approve salaries and pensions for our union workforce, because they have received campaign contribution from them, and the roads are crumbling because they put their priorities with the union employees and not the residents of Glendale. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other cards on this item. We have a motion and a second. Let's take roll call, please.
Councilmember Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Garpetian?
Yes.
Sinanian? Mayor Najarian?
Yes. Next item, please.
B, Director of Community Services and Parks regarding wireless antenna lease agreement between City of Glendale and Los Angeles SMSA Limited Partnership DBA Verizon Wireless for Fremont Park. B1, ordinance for introduction for the lease agreement with Los Angeles SMSA Limited Partnership DBA Verizon Wireless to install a wireless telecommunications facility at Fremont Park.
Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. We have two items rather straightforward for you. We have to take them separately as they're two different ordinances, but they're generally in the same vein of item. The first one, and you'll hear from Coco Panosian, who's put together our report. Coco is the maintenance manager for the CSP department, deals with the opportunity to place a Verizon monopole in Fremont Park at the north side of the park, as we have done in a number of other locations as a lease with the telecoms. So with that, I'll have Coco come up and provide a brief presentation. Coco.
Thank you, Mr. Ochoa. Good evening, Mayor Najarian, members of council. My name is Coco Panosian. I'm the Park Services Administrator, and I deal with the cell tower contracts that are within park and open space properties. Currently, we have 8 cell towers located within our parks and our open spaces that generate annually $325,000 in revenue. And we use the revenue to offset maintenance costs at our ball fields, and generally, overall, in the entire park system, we use these funds to do ball field renovations and special projects within our parks. The current proposal in front of you is for Verizon Wireless at the Fremont Park site. It is at the northeast segment of a park in a location where you will not be impacting the general park operations. It's out of sight. It's an area where we used for our operation between the wash and the maintenance garage. It has been a storage shed area for us. So best use of that property, we figured, would be to improve the telecommunication within the area, and Verizon had approached us with a proposal a couple of years back. We've been negotiating, and hence we are here in front of you. Verizon has gone through the zoning approval process, and the Planning Commission has reviewed and approved the proposal that is in front of you. We've gone to the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission and received their blessing to bring this item before you for introduction as an ordinance. These cell tower contracts currently at our sites generate a monthly revenue of $3,000, which equates to $36,000 a year. And part of the terms of the contract are for initial 10-year term with option to renew for 3 additional 5-year terms. And we have a 4% escalation that, if compounded in a given 10-year, this one site at Fremont could generate about $450,000 for the city. And if you do go to the entire cycle of the 25 years and running the numbers with, as not as skilled as accountant I may be, it's going to generate $1.5 million at this one site the entire life of the 25 years. For this Fremont site, there's the only difference between this Fremont site and the next item that we'll present to you is we also made an agreement with Verizon Wireless for one-time $5,000 that they'll have to pay us because we had to remove an existing container for our supplies that we had for our storage. We moved that to another location where we're able to use it for supplies and materials and equipment that at times we store. And at this location, we will likely be placing a tough shed, and they've agreed to pay us $5,000 for that transfer, and we'll be receiving that as soon as the contract is executed. We've compared, just for comparison, back in 09-10 fiscal year, the cell tower revenues generated within the park properties were equating about $215,000. This past 7 years, we've been able to increase that to about $325,000. And if these two items go through the next couple of weeks after it gets adopted as an ordinance, we will likely be generating about $400,000 annually from these cell towers that goes right back into our community and the programming and the maintenance services we provide to our residents. And that is essentially all that I have at this point. We've vetted through with the city attorney's office. They have been, we've been working very closely with them. The language in the ordinance is current with our the WTF, our wireless telecommunication facility ordinance. It is current to the standards. The rates are very valued as far as the $3,000 is a very reasonable rate that we have as far as the market goes. The Verizon Wireless has agreed to all the indemnifications, all the insurance requirements. So we have a solid agreement in front of you for your consideration for introduction as an ordinance tonight.
Any questions?
That is my report.
I have a couple of questions.
I do have a card. I won't forget that. But let me ask a question.
Yes, sir.
How important has the cell phone become to our community?
I can speak from my personal experience, Mayor Najarian. We do not have a home line any longer. A lot of my colleagues and friends, they do not have a home line anymore. Cell phone has become the thing of the future, and currently even my kids are playing around with a cell phone. It is the best way of communication. Everyone in this room currently right now, I would bet that 99% of people in this room have a cell phone that use it for data, that use it for their emails and communications. So it is what the current way of communication is.
Okay. That's what I thought, but I just wanted your opinion as well. Mr. Karpetian.
Yes, you indicated that we have 8 cell towers or 9?
Yes, sir.
Where are they located at?
We have 4 cell towers located at the open space driveway off of Fern Lane that is next to the sports complex. We have a T-Mobile site, STC1, we have a Crown Castle, and we actually have a Verizon site at that location as well. We currently have one at Shoal Ball Fields. It is a T-Mobile site. We have one at Pelanconi Park. We have one at the Babe Herman Baseball League, the Little League field, as well as we have one at Stengel Field. Now, each one is a different design depending on their locations. A lot of them are street lights that are on Fern Lane. The one at the Pelanconi Park is a flagpole. The one at Stengel Field, it is actually placed on the ball field light poles. And the current one being proposed is a monopine, which is more of a way to blend it in with this location. There are several pine trees at that site, and if you look at the attachment, when I was reviewing, I couldn't even tell there's a cell tower there because it was blending in. The concept of the design was to make it blend in with its nature and make it so visible that it's truly out there as a cell tower. So those are the sites that we currently have our cell towers.
So the ones that in Pelanconi, Stengel, and Babe Herman, they've been there for a while. Oh, there's a cell phone, you said. If it's for me, just tell them I'm busy.
Yes, Councilmember Karpetian, the one over at Babe Herman Little League Field is probably our oldest cell towers in our system. It is reaching at its 20th mark, 20 years. The one at Stengel Ball Field has been in place for about just past 10 years right now. We're there in they're past the first 10-year phase, and they've gone into the 5-year term. The ones on Fern Lane, their first 10-year phase expired as far as the term, and we did not extend it to an additional 5-year. We felt that at that time the market rate did not reflect what they were paying. So all those carriers, we went through a renegotiation process, and we increased all of them from about $1,500 to $1,800 a month to $3,000. So most of those cell towers have been in place from the mid-'90s on.
The ones that are in our parks, that's the ones I was referring to, because I received a couple of emails about the concerns with having cell phone towers in the parks and the effect of them and everything else. I just want to make sure that the ones that we had no complaints, no issues, and also the ones that we're installing, it meets all the regulations and as far as the health hazards and everything else goes, because these are in residential neighborhoods. I know it's up against the wash, but it's in a residential neighborhood. It's in a park, and it's a large park, and it's frequently visited. It's used by the residents, and I want to make sure that we follow every rule there is.
Yes, Mayor Najjar and Councilmember Garpetian. Thus far, I have been managing the cell towers for the community service and parks since 2004, 2005, and we have not any major issues that we've had to deal with, whether it be public complaints or whatnot. Most of the newer cell towers, all of the cell towers, they have to comply by the FCC regulations, our zoning, and the planning requirements that are in place. So they get those permits through the FCC, and we have it on file. So there hasn't been any, we haven't experienced any challenges and or situations where a cell tower was not up to code and up to par with any regulations that may be current within the FCC.
We are limited in our abilities in regulating their
You're absolutely
cell
correct,
towers.
Councilman Garpetian. We're regulated when it comes to some of the radio frequencies as it relates to FCC. They are the ones who regulate those functions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do you have a comment?
Just a couple of questions. Who chose the spot, the location? How do you respond to these health concerns? And we are preempted by the federal government, correct?
Yes, Mayor Najarian, Councilmember Devine. The first question, as far as the location, usually the vendors, whether it be AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, they approach us and send a request saying we'd like to meet at this site because we have a gap in our coverage. With the radio frequency engineers, the techs will look at a map and say we have an area where we have dark and we're not really have a good coverage, and we need to place a cell phone. And they look at ideal properties. For the Verizon site, we could say the original location they wanted was more and more of a centralized location of a park that we just couldn't go with. It will be in the way of our park operations, and we typically, when we're on site, we guide them to a location where we feel would be in the best interest of the city. Out of the way, out of sight, in an area that it will not impact our operation. At the same time, it's going to be an unused area that we're going to generate revenue from. That's how we come to the conclusion of the site before we allow them to proceed through the process. The second question was related to just
health concerns.
Health concerns. The health concerns also, there have been a lot of studies done. I'm not the expert in that field to be able to address that. A lot of studies have been done, and they have their findings. And based on those findings, FCC regulates the frequencies and all regulations that come along with that, and we as an agency are
bound by those.
It's above our hands, I guess.
Okay, I do have a card from Tony Passarola.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, city staff, and viewing public. Well, I am a sort of an expert on the health effects of EMF, microwave transmission from cell towers. I've been studying it for years. As a matter of fact, I'm in the business. I survey homes. Anyway, he talked about EMFscientist.org. 190 scientists from 39 nations wrote 2,000 peer-reviewed studies talking about the negative health effects of cell towers. Now, I know Ms. Friedman is against cell towers in neighborhoods. She wrote the action plan in 2009. I'm sure she recalls that for Go Act. Glendale organized against cell towers, and she certainly wouldn't want a cell tower in her neighborhood. And I know if she lived in that area and with a child, she certainly wouldn't want a cell tower there. And I know Ms. Devine is is especially concerned about children with your huge donations to the Children's Hospital. I'm aware of that. And Mr. Garpetian, I know you have soccer. You're a coach and you have children that play soccer. I mean, why do we need a second cell tower at the ball fields? There's already a huge one up there. There's no gap in coverage, in my opinion. If you go to antennasearch.com, there's 100 cell towers within 4 miles of Fremont Park. And the 2 cell towers on San Fernando Road are approximately 0.4 miles from the facility there in Fremont Park. The gentleman talked about money, and that's what it sounds like. If you can look at my slides there, these are signs that are posted all over the place. Radio frequency hazard. Radio, go a little slower, please, Artie. Radio frequency hazard. Radio energy from site may exceed levels from safe human exposure. Next one. Well, we can't quite see that. Radio frequency burn. If you touch a metallic object in an area, you could get burned. We got kids playing in the park. There's tennis courts. There's basketball courts in Fremont Park. There's a volleyball sand pit. If we could go to the one with the pacemaker, is that it? There it is. Radio frequency had dangers to pacemakers. We got these Armenian gentlemen that play these board games. They're 70 to 90 years old.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm sure some of those got pacemakers. So this is a very, very bad idea. We're putting our children at risk. Again, peer-reviewed studies, 190 scientists. Am I going to have, Mr. Mayor, a chance to speak on the...
We will do 8C following this.
Okay, thank you.
We'll hear the report.
Question? Mr. Passarelli?
Yes.
Wasn't that your cell phone that just went off?
I knew you were going to say that.
Wasn't it?
So what? I mean,
I'm just asking.
everybody's got a cell phone.
But if we don't have
I don't
towers,
abuse it. I don't abuse it.
I
use it when needed. I carry it with me. I have family.
Right.
So what does that got to do with anything?
No, just
I knew you were going to throw that out there, Ms. Freedom. I absolutely knew that.
Please relax.
Because that's
There's
what you do.
nothing wrong with having a cell phone. I have one too.
But why do you bring that up now?
Well, I was going to make the point that if we don't have cell towers, then our cell phones won't be.
We can't have a back and forth, but thank you for
Well, that was a really, really...
Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it.
I'll say it. You heard
Keep the decorum.
Typical.
Well...
Mr. Passarella, I give you some extra time. I let you respond to her questions. Let's just keep it at this level of discourse. I don't have any other cards on this item, 8B. This is a motion for introduction. Someone like to introduce it?
Can we ask a question before we introduce the ordinance?
Yes, of course.
Is that okay?
Of course.
I just want to know for everybody out there to know, for us as well, for me personally, having a cell tower in the park, 1 or 2 of them, because Babe Herman has one. We practice there all day long for the last 12, 13 years. And you touched my soft spot talking about soccer and the kids, soccer fields and everything else. But the effects of cell tower when you're playing in a park and carrying a cell phone, carrying one to another, do we have any answers to those or not? I mean, I know they're all over the place, but maybe because some companies like AT&T, they have a cell tower and the Verizon doesn't have one, that's why they want to install one. I don't know how the coverages go, but having 1 or 2, maybe that's the reason that they want to have the second tower. It's not just the same company using that tower. So is that the case?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's a private business to the extent that a cellular provider wants to ensure that there's redundancy for their customer and thus make their service more valuable, make them more viable company and ongoing concern. They wouldn't be paying us $36,000 a year if they didn't need to, if the need wasn't there. So to the extent that the Verizons of the world go and identify holes in coverage, or they want redundancy, even if there is no hole, it's just not as robust as what they want, they would come and approach. And they will look for areas, there was referenced the telecommunications ordinance that the city has in place that Councilmember Friedman had brought forward, seeks to govern to the extent allowable where installations can exist primarily along the public right-of-way and especially in residential neighborhoods. To the extent that these are all in parks, in open spaces where they are less obtrusive and are separated away from the regular daily activities like somebody's home. That would seem to make the most amount of sense, because at the end of the day, the federal government's going to, and the FCC will govern what the allowable levels of RF may be that are emanated either from your cell phone, from your microwave, from your cell tower. To the extent, and just the last point, because the issue of money came up again, on a $184 million general fund budget, $36,000 a year at a cell site doesn't make a heck of a lot of difference in that scheme of things. Where I think Mr. Panosian and his team actively pursue these opportunities is one where there's a cell provider that sees that there is a need, and two, where we have an asset that we can maximize the value of and the utility of it. You all have pointed out, if you're going to have a cell phone, you need a cell tower. So we want to have that level of coverage. You don't want to have those dark spots on the cell service. But if we have a facility, we have the availability of space not adjacent to anyone's home where it's most obtrusive, most objectionable, then why wouldn't we seek to maximize the value of that asset? You've heard from one of our other speakers talk about, well, you need those dollars for other things. You've heard Mr. Panosian say the dollars that are generated go right back into CSP. That's being entrepreneurial. That's being resourceful.
If I may, the reason that I asked the gentleman about his phone was actually to make 2 points. One is, if we don't have cell towers, then these phones don't work very well. But secondly, I'm not an expert in this by any means. I did work very much on the cell tower ordinance several years ago in the city, so I did some research then. And what I learned, and again, I'm not an expert, I could be wrong, is that the phone that you carry around in your pocket is giving you a lot more exposure to radiation, since you're carrying it right next to you and it tends to emit radiation, much more than incidentally passing by a cell tower or being next to a cell tower for an hour or two 40, 50 feet away, where I think you are getting much less exposure to any kind of radiation, and it's certainly not against your body. So that was the point. The point is that we worry about things like a cell tower, but we're not really, a lot of us, thinking about what we're carrying around with us in our pocket right next to our vital organs. So that's something to think about. And the federal government does preempt us, to where what I learned when I was working on writing that ordinance was that we can't say no to cell towers. All we can do is direct where they're going to be. And a lot of times it really is going to be, if we don't have it in the park where we're putting it sort of near, in this case, we're not in the middle of the playground, you're kind of off in a yard somewhere that's being used to store equipment, kind of away from people. The alternative a lot of times is that they'll put these cell towers right in front of people's houses. So to the extent that we can control where the towers go, that's the extent of the control we have as a local municipality, and one that I think it's important for us to exercise to the extent that we can, to try to get the towers in places where they are the least intrusive and the least worrisome for people who might otherwise have them right next to their house where they're spending most of their time. So I'll support this ordinance. I don't think that we really have a whole lot of choice about restricting them, and I personally am not losing sleep at night about cell towers that are around all of our neighborhoods, by the way. If you're getting cell reception, you've got some sort of cell tower near you. If you live in an area where you're not getting cell reception, at least your carrier maybe doesn't have a relay, but somebody else's carrier might. So this is something that's kind of all around us all the time. So is it an introduction or is it a motion?
Introduction. It's an introduction. Ms. Devine.
Mr. Ochoa, is there any reason that we should believe that there is not a dark spot there, that there is not a necessity for a cell tower?
I would defer to the representative from Verizon. Again, if they are coming in looking to exhaust their resources to install a tower, it would have to tell you that they need it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it.
And by the way, part of the ordinance that was introduced several years ago that we worked on did ask for some sort of demonstration from the carrier that there's some sort of necessity. Now, I don't know how that's vetted and who runs that to ground, but that's supposed to be in their application.
I'm the rep from Verizon. I'm actually with Delta Engineering, and my name is John Van Rossum, and we are an agent, a contractor for Verizon. What's that?
Oh, so you're going to have to fill out a card, sir. I'll give you 3 minutes to speak.
I thought you were asking for...
Well, I know there was a question thrown out. I'm not sure it was rhetorical or... No. You don't put towers where you don't need the coverage, do you?
And correct, and especially paying the kind of rent that we're paying. I'm working on 30 deals, and we're not even close to paying anywhere near the rent that we're paying you guys, because it is a serious hole. Yeah, he did a great job. There's a serious hole there at Fremont Park and at Shoal Canyon, and it's near a park, and 70% of 911 calls are made by cell phones. So if you're in a park and a kid breaks his leg or something, it's pretty important to have coverage to make sure that they get fast response.
So there's a question about the radio frequency or radiation. Is this like an X-ray where we're getting lethal amounts of...
I'm a real estate guy, and I'm pretty sure that if there was a problem, we wouldn't have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of cell towers around the country emitting EMFs everywhere. I'm sure we'd all be glowing in the dark if that was the case. So I'm not an expert. I'm a real estate guy. So.
Okay, thank you. But for the record, I would like you to fill out a card, so when we go back, we can see that you did address council to some extent.
Any other questions?
No, this is...
That was it. Thank you.
This is a ordinance for introduction.
Great. Thank you.
Would someone like to introduce it?
I already did.
You did. Okay. Then let's move on to the next item, 8C.
8C is Director of Community Services and Parks regarding wireless antenna lease agreement between the City of Glendale and Los Angeles SMSA Limited Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless for Shoal Canyon Ballfield. C1 is ordinance for introduction for the lease agreement with Los Angeles SMSA Limited Partnership, DBA Verizon Wireless to install a wireless telecommunications facility at Shoal Canyon Ballfield.
Mr. Ochoa?
Here again, sir, this is a companion piece. Much of the same items apply. This installation would be up at the Shoal Park Ballfields just south of the golf course. If you have any specific questions, I'm sure Mr. Panosian can address those.
Okay, I do have a card. I know many of our comments were germane to this issue as well, but let's call Tony Passarella, please.
Good evening again, Mayor, City Council, and staff. Ms. Free, let me get this straight. When you were on the other side of this in 2009, before you were on council, you wrote the action plan for Go Act. Am I right?
Well, no, this is not a back and forth, so you have 3 minutes.
I'll be happy to.
So you wrote. So she did. She did, and I have video of that. So now she's on the other side of this, and now you're supporting cell towers in neighborhoods when you didn't want it in 2009 in your neighborhood, but now it's okay in somebody else's neighborhood. So who are you working for, Mrs. Friedman? Are you working for the people? Are you then you were, because you were on the people's side. Now you're on the government side, and so now you're working not for the people in this case. Whoa. And as far as the gentleman just walking up here, and not filling out a card or anything, and you allowing that wasn't cool, Mr. Mayor. Anyway, as far as health effects, listen, there's a thing called the internet, right? Y'all heard about it? You can go on there forever and find out study after study after study, expert after expert after expert. Again, let me repeat, emfscientists.org, 190 scientists from 39 countries, 2,000 peer-reviewed studies of negative health effects from microwave. I mean, didn't you all do your research? Didn't you all study that? Didn't you look at that? Doesn't that have an effect on you when we're talking about children? That there's a kill zone. It's 200 feet, and there's homes, all around these areas, Fremont Park and the Shoal Canyon. As far as gaps in coverage, for heaven's sakes, again, we got one cell tower already up there on the ball fields. And now we need another one? And listen, it's all about the money. I can tell you that right now, folks. It's all about the money, and people are getting paid off big time. In ascending order, Sprint CEO, total compensation for 2013, $9 million. Intel CEO, Brian, can't say it, total compensation, $9 million. Motorola, Greg Brown, total compensation, $12 million. Qualcomm, Steve Mollenkroft, total compensation, $14 million. Verizon Communications CEO, Lowell McAdam, $15 million. Let me go on here. I'm getting close to number one. Qualcomm Chairman Paul Jacobs, $20 million a year. Former BlackBerry CEO Hines, $22 million. Number one coming up, AT&T total compensation, $23 million. And Sprint CEO Dan Hesse, total compensation for 2016, $49 million. It's all about the money, just like this gentleman said. It's all about the money, and you're just disregarding the negative health effects. All y'all.
Thank you.
Mr. Najarian. Just to answer some of that, just to go back to the GO Act days, which was probably 2007. You would remember 2007, 2008. So I was on the design review board at the time, and one of my neighbors came to me, actually was concerned because they were going to put a cell tower right in front of his door, right on the parkway in front of his house. And he didn't really want to walk outside of his house every day and see this big tower. He's a pretty, this particular neighbor, not a real extremist person, not super concerned about health effects generally, but just thought this was really ugly. And you've probably seen the towers. There's also the boxes. You know, a lot of times those end up out in front of people's houses, and they don't look very good. So being a commissioner on the city, I decided to kind of take it upon myself to work with them to look into what our ordinances were regarding cell towers. And I don't think that there were any ordinances specifically about cell towers, or none. And so I, believing, as I still do, that cities and municipalities should have some right to determine where these things go, where in their neighborhoods, because we are preempted by federal law, and I learned that at the time. We can't say no to them. I never talked about the health effects of them ever, because I'm not convinced that these things are the hazards that some people think they are. If they want to believe that, that's fine. That's just not where I was coming from. I believe that municipalities should be able to say where they go. So I worked with the group in that neighborhood to come up with an ordinance that did a few things. One of the things was to have a requirement when there was a submittal that there were some gaps in coverage. Because in terms of just proliferation, I do believe that these towers should co-locate, so you don't have more of them than you need. So we had a requirement that they had to look at existing towers to see if they could co-locate different installations within the same tower. That was part of the ordinance, and I'm assuming that was done. The installation had to go in front of the Planning Commission, which this did, and I think it also went in front of Parks Commissions, we were told. So it had to go in front of all of the respective commissions, and that the city would be able to exercise whatever control we were allowed to by federal law to determine the placement of the towers. So in this case, instead of going, let's say, in front of someone's house, they came to us to say, is there a better location for this that's in the area? We looked at the park, it sounds like, and looked at an area of the park that wasn't really being used by the public and said, this is a better location. So it's perfectly in keeping with what I had proposed at the time. And if you do go back and look at those tapes, you'll see that I was never against cell towers or on one side or the other. I just felt that our city, that Glendale, should be able to have a voice in, if we're going to have towers, where they go and how many that we have. So I've been perfectly consistent over the years. I've never got up in public and said that we should never have cell towers in neighborhoods. There's plenty of them in my neighborhood, I can tell you, because that one that was talked about, they still exist. They're just in different places than being in front of people's front doors. So I don't think there's any inconsistency in that position. And I do hope that as technology improves, we need a lot less of these, because I think a lot of times they really aren't very attractive. And I don't know that they're co-locating to the limits that they really could, but I think that a lot of that has to do with proprietary technologies. But as people demand bandwidth, we're going to see more and more of these, because it's not just about cell phone reception. It's you want to pull in 100 gigabytes of data. You want to be able to stream movies on your phone. People, when they move into neighborhoods, ask any real estate agent. And if they're a young professional and they can't get cell reception in their house, if they can't get fast internet connections streaming into their homes, people don't want to buy those properties. So that's one of the reasons that we're seeing more and more of these, is because people are demanding a lot more bandwidth, and that's coming through personal devices and through cellular, not just through things like hardwiring and cable connections. So that's the reality of the marketplace, and that's what we're seeing more and more of these. So I just wanted to give people that are watching maybe some background about where I was in 2008 and 2007, and I'm very proud to have had a hand in that ordinance, and I think that it is working well. And I know that after we did that, a lot of cities came and asked us for that to use as a model ordinance, and I know that we were kind of a trailblazer in that respect.
Okay. Any other comments? Does one of y'all want to make the introduction of the ordinance?
That's cute.
I will introduce the ordinance.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on, please.
Mr. Mayor and Council, there are no agendized items on the remainder of the agenda. Now is the portion for oral communications, a 5-minute portion. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Councilor may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. City manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kasakian. I'm not sure your microphone was on, but we heard what you.
My mic is on.
We heard what you
had
to say. And I do notice a large influx of residents. I'm guessing that a large portion of you, not all, would like to make comments on Shoal Canyon issue. And I'm going to go back to the city manager to perhaps repeat some of your earlier remarks that you made at the onset of this meeting.
Certainly, sir. We had become aware from a newsletter in the neighborhood that there was a belief the Shoal Canyon EIR for the landfill would come back on the 26th. That is not the case. It will not be back on the 26th. It cannot come back on the 26th. There's been no noticing for it to come back on the 26th. And in fact, the comments have all not been responded to as yet. So at this point, I don't see that this matter comes back before you for a number of reasons, primarily revolving around some of the alternative technologies that are being explored, that were requested to be explored, so that we can expand the life of the facility and make it, as we have said throughout, to convert it from a landfill facility with a alternative disposal, anaerobic digestion, waste-to-energy type of component to a waste-to-energy anaerobic digestion facility with a landfill component, and make that transition. That is going to require some additional information. We're providing that information. We will be providing that information to the council, to the community, and I expect that is going to happen probably in the spring. We have the budget process that will commence at about the same time, so I don't know that this will be back in front of you at least until May, maybe even slightly later than that, maybe into the summer months. But just to be very clear, it will not be back in front of you on the 26th of January or any time in the foreseeable future.
Okay, thank you. The first speaker is Samuel Gasparian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, council members, for this opportunity. First of all, I would like to thank you, council member Vartan Karavetian, last month for the appointment and for your assistance helping me with the city permit center.
Of course.
The question is, the 2014 I bought a house located 933 Geneva Street. Based on also the document I got from the Glendale city, as soon as I got that house, I had a small project addition around 300 square feet. But I was told in permit center that second floor of my house is illegal. I asked the seller to solve the problem. They hired a contractor, and I was told that in 1 month the problem would be solved. I don't know, it's incompetence of the contractor or his actually financial interest. But I know that he went along with the city permit center. I ended up okay that the second floor is illegal. It has to be legalized. In front of you, you have actually the owner, 1987, Mrs. Han, specifically asked the city to have an inspection. She paid for that to find out if she's in a violation of the city codes or not. And she got a letter that I have a copy of that letter that it doesn't take any illegal construction or city violation there. Year after that, she had an addition of the house. She didn't have any problem. The owner from I bought the house replaced all the windows on first floor and the second floor. And on a city permit, it tells you 2-story house. Now I am taking responsible, the permit center taking me responsible. They are telling me that it's illegal. All kind of, and I believe it's baseless, whatever they are saying based on the documents. I'm asking your help.
Okay, we cannot answer you
I understand
at this
that,
time.
yes.
What we can do is direct you to staff. I understand you've been working with Mr. Karpetian to try and resolve it. I'm sure staff is aware
Mr.
of
Mayor,
this.
if I may, Mr. Oganessian made an appointment, came to the city and met with me regarding the issue that he
Gasparian, sorry.
Gasparian,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And apparently he has a house that, from the appearance of the house, from the outside, is 2 stories. The attic space at some point was converted into a living space, and there were permits pulled to replace the windows at one point, and it was gone through. And now I believe that he's trying to make an addition to the rear of the house, a small addition, and now being asked to tear down the second floor. So I directed him to, sorry? I thought you were talking. Yeah, and he wants to legalize that second floor, and I directed him to staff and our city planning director and said, you need to go to the city and basically legalize your second floor. But right now, I think that what happens was the two are kind of interconnected, the addition portion as well as the legalization, and until he legalizes the second floor, he cannot finish his or complete his construction, so or get permits for his construction.
I'm sorry interrupting. No, the question is not legalizing.
Well, let me interrupt you. I'm sorry, but so we can't discuss this as a group because it's not agendized.
Yeah, okay.
But I just want to
about
make sure, and Mr. Karpetian has assured us that planning staff is aware of the issue, and that hopefully they're working through the issue with you to reach a conclusion. But now we all know about it.
Yeah, it's 16 months. For the last thing I would like to say, it's 16 months they are holding hostage. Thank you.
You can keep us posted by email or address the
All right.
council.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. Just because we have a lot of visitors, I think, from the great city of Los Angeles, and welcome, just so that you understand that anything that comes up during oral communications, we cannot legally respond to. So we can listen to you, but you're not going to be able to get any response because these items are not agendized. And in fact, the item about Shoal Canyon, the project itself, of any expansion, may not come to us for 4 or 5 years. The EIR that's coming to be certified is not going to come to us, it sounds like, till spring or summer. At that point, there will be a discussion. You're certainly welcome to speak tonight, but you're not going to be hearing a response from us. Our city attorney would stop us if we tried.
And the mayor would, too.
And the mayor. I meant the mayor.
As much as we would like to engage, we are prevented by the Brown Act in doing so. But let's continue. We're certainly willing to hear all your thoughts. Owen Lewis.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Owen Lewis. I reside at 2474 Bywood Drive. In a way, it's a bit of a relief to find out that the EIR will not be coming in front of you for a while to give us a little more time to prepare. But in another way, it's a little bit of a disappointment because we would like to bring this topic and this issue to a head. The EIR that is coming before you is flawed. It does not address the true geology of the region. In fact, even now, the landfill is probably leaking contaminants into the water table and into the Los Angeles River water system. Even now, it is contaminating the air that is flowing down to the residents below it. And I notice Mr. Ochoa is chuckling, but I might point out that Mr. Ochoa does not live in Glendale. He has nothing at stake here except money.
I think for the record, sir, the gentleman's incorrect.
I apologize if that's not true. Well, I would point out that according to the original agreement that established the landfill, it was supposed to be closed either in 17 years after its opening or upon its being filled. 17 years was over 25 years ago. So it's my opinion that the city has been operating the landfill illegally for 25 years. The other thing I'd like to point out is that according to that agreement, all the fees from the landfill were supposed to be going into recreation projects for the city. In fact, at the end of the lifespan, 17 years of that landfill, it was supposed to have been converted to recreational facilities. And the money from the fees used to convert the entire landfill area to recreational facilities. I believe the money is going into the general fund, and we understand that the city is addicted to the fees generated by the landfill. The fact is that increasing the size of this landfill is going to put more pollutants in the air, more pollutants in the water. And the issue is whether the city council is concerned about money or the health and welfare of its residents. I live about a mile from, or less from the landfill. I noticed just recently it's been raised to its height limit of just over 1,500 feet on the berms on the west end. Interesting that this should be happening now, that the issue is coming before the public and before the city council in the form of an expansion proposal. If you want to do the right thing, you should close this landfill, take steps to close this landfill immediately. Glendale takes pride in its appearance, the Jewel City. Do you really want to have this little jewel? Well, it's not going to be so little. It's going to be visible from Interstate 134 at its proposed 180-foot high increase in height. Do you really want to be known for the city that has the largest landfill in California? I believe right now it's the 20th largest landfill in the country. It straddles Glendale and Pasadena. You're going to be able to see it from the Rose Bowl. You're going to be able to see it from Pasadena. You can see the new berms right now from Glen Oaks Boulevard as you drive up. So I would just implore you to consider closing down this eyesore and this pollutant, this polluting facility. And with all due respect, when this does come up for a vote, we will be watching. You can see there's many people here with signs and blue armbands. We'll be attending meetings from now on, and we will be active in this. And I would say that we'll be watching. And each and every one of you that vote for the acceptance of this EIR or expanding the landfill will be challenged in future elections. We're going to make it our personal project to make sure that anyone who votes for this project is unseated. I'll run myself if I have to. You don't want that.
They don't want that.
So thank you for your time. Appreciate your attention.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Although a particular speaker may be in agreement with your thoughts, I'm going to insist that you refrain from loud cheering and applause. Pat on the back might do just as well. We have a long meeting. We have about 20 or so cards, which is going to put us well over an hour and a half of oral communication. So we're willing to listen to your comments, but let's not have prolonged cheering or applause afterwards. Brian Boyle.
Thank you. I'll be speaking on the same issue, the Shoal landfill. I live in the shadow of the dump, and I bike and I run around the hills around the dump. By the way, they're beautiful hills, except for the dump. And I've also noticed that shadow is getting taller and taller. The proposal you will be considering is going to increase the height of the landfill, as previously mentioned, by 180 feet. Now, what I'm concerned about is how much more tonnage of pressure will that be on the landfill itself, pressing down the toxic gases and the toxic liquids into the ground. Now, that dump does not have a seal. And yes, that dump is on granite, but that granite is crushed granite, which is permeable, which means that any toxic liquid will be seeping into the groundwater. Now, we're mostly from Glen Oaks Canyon, and that would be our groundwater, of course. But that's your groundwater. Anybody who lives in Glendale, that's your groundwater. Anybody who raises children here, that's their groundwater. The dump wasn't built for that kind of pressure. And in fact, it's also built on top of the Verdugo Fault. What happens in an earthquake? What's going to happen to that toxic seepage? And not only that, there is a history of methane leakage in the dump. And all we got to do is look at the current news of Aliso Canyon and Porter Ranch to think of the problems that they're having. Think about that. As mentioned before, the city promised the residents of our canyon that the dump would be closed in 17 years and turned into a park. What a beautiful idea. And I don't know if any of you go up there in the surrounding neighborhoods, but it's beautiful up there. It's gorgeous. I mean, just think of how gorgeous that would be. And this city passed a zero waste ordinance. And we, the residents of Glendale, have been tightening our belts to reduce our waste. Why expand the dump when waste is reducing in this city? And not only that, if you're asking us to tighten our belts, well, we would like to ask you to tighten yours. I would like you to consider closing the dump and putting a beautiful park up there. And I know that's going to hit the pocketbook. We all realize that. But what an amazing thing, what an amazing message Glendale would send to everybody. Not just words on paper of, well, we have a zero, ordinance, garbage ordinance. disposal ordinance, but you're actually making a symbolic gesture that, again, if there's anybody seeking higher office that might consider placing themselves in a platform of environmental, that would be wonderful. What a statement that would make. And in respect to the aerobic digestion facility, I think it's a great idea. But this dump is surrounded on all sides by residential areas. This is not a place for experimentation. Take the experiment to a more industrial area. See if it works. See what kind of, what happens with experiments. Sometimes things go wrong. And if something goes wrong in that dump, it's going to go really wrong. And you want Glendale to be known for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Richard Espinoza.
My name is Richard Espinoza, and I want to speak to you as a community member as well as a parent. And I want to draw your attention to the signs that many people are carrying. And I'm wearing blue to show solidarity for community members that feel strongly about the landfill. And what we need to keep in mind is whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it's hazardous to the environment. And for those of us that have children who live in Glendale, may continue to live in Glendale, it poses a health threat. And until every and each one of you can prove that differently, I would encourage you to vote no on expansion and also on its closure. As I mentioned before, I want to speak to you as a community member and as a parent. I have lived in Glendale for over 20 years. In the last 15 years, I lived in Glen Oaks Canyon. At the time that I moved in, I did not know there was a landfill, and I didn't find out about it until maybe 2 years ago. And I was really in shock, really surprised, and really questioned as to whether or not I would have moved to that community knowing there was a landfill. But as it is now, I have 3 kids that have gone through Glendale Public Schools, and I had decided to make Glendale my village for my children. And I'm happy to say that I'm proud to live here. I've been very happy with the schools, the teachers, the staff, the administration, all the support, the community services that have been provided for myself and my children, the parks and recreation, the cultural diversity that we're able to enjoy. My kids have friends from different cultures, different nationality. We welcome everyone from different cultures. I don't really have a lot of experience as a politician, so I'm not going to speak to you as a politician. When I think of Glendale, I think of a lot of positive things. And I just want to share with you that I thought Glendale was a progressive city. And when I found out about this issue, I emailed every one of you. And to my dismay, my disappointment, and sadness, only one person responded to my email, and that was Paul Devine. And I thank you for that, because that means a lot to me. It tells me that you care about your residents. You have a stake. You heard me. Whether you agree or whether you disagree, you acknowledged me. And it's not very nice to be ignored. And in talking to community members, people who have put in more hours, more time than myself, the Gotcha organization, Glen Oaks Homeowners Association, the CFLA, Coalition for Landfill Alternatives, said that they feel basically they have been ignored by you. And that's not right. Everyone here in Glendale has the right to be heard and has the right to be listened to, and not just say, oh, well, this is not going to come in 5 years. It's an issue. It's an issue that we need to deal with. Global warming, the environment, the adverse effects by toxins in the ground, in the air, is happening now. We cannot afford to ignore it. What I want to leave you with is that you see more members here than you probably have in the past that are for the closure of the landfills. And I just want to leave with you that our numbers are going to grow. Our voices are going to become louder. We're going to seek more media representation, and we are going to show a lot of clout during election time. So please consider this issue seriously. It's for the benefit of everyone who lives in the city and in the neighboring areas. Thank you.
Next speaker is Marlin or Martin. It's address on East Lomita Avenue. Okay. The next speaker is Mike Mohill.
Mayor Najarian, before I speak tonight, I'm not speaking about the landfill. It's going to be about something else.
I listen to you regardless, Mr.
I know you do. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Najarian and council members. My name is Mike Mohill. It is being reported since June 2014, our City Council and Glendale Community College have been in negotiations to sell our historic Glendale Civic Auditorium to Glendale Community College. The college would like to expand their footprint, but the topography of their land has limited their ability to expand. Should the college purchase the historic auditorium, they are also planning to acquire the surrounding parking lots and place another huge 4-level parking structure topped with tennis courts and powerful night lights. The parking structure is planned where the proposed Armenian American Museum would be. This parking eyesore will be a lighthouse beacon shining into everyone's backyards. Since the college stays open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. weekly, the quality of life for the residents of Royal Canyon, Ross Moines, and Verdugo Woodlands will never be the same. The residential streets such as Mountain, Ethel, and Royal will be heavily impacted with cut-through traffic, congestion, and parking. Since the 1920s, the taxpayers of Glendale have been maintaining the historic Civic Auditorium because the college is financially strapped. Now the same taxpayers will be asked to purchase another bond for the college to buy the auditorium. The city is swimming in debt. Judgment Day is here. Even after all the rapid overdevelopment, there still will not be enough property tax or sales tax revenue to pay down the $250 million unfunded Cadillac post-employee medical insurance and the over $440 million unfunded pension obligation for just current retirees. After coming before council numerous times through the years, warning of the pending pension crisis, this council will sell the Glendale Historic Auditorium. The city is also negotiating with several developers to purchase the other historic Rock Haven Sanitarium. Further down the road, the city may have to sell our library, city hall, and parking structures. Mayor Najarian has even said twice on council he would like to sell our jewel, Glendale Water and Power, to the highest bidder. In July 2015, CalPERS only reported 2.4% return on their investments. Unless CalPERS makes dramatic investment returns, the taxpayers of Glendale will be sending CalPERS an additional $38 to $50 million more to cover their losses. Selling our assets only perpetuates the status quo and benefits existing CalPERS employees and not the taxpayers who are paying higher fees and taxes. It is laughable when Councilman Friedman blames CalPERS for our financial problems. Both she and Councilman Najarian have received thousands of dollars in campaign money from our city unions and then sit on council protecting their interests and not the taxpayers. The average Social Security recipient annually receives about $15,000. Mrs. Friedman has stated that Social Security was only meant to keep people from abject poverty. Ironically, she has no problem defending CalPERS employees with their annual $100 to over $250,000 lifetime pensions at age 50 or 55. CalPERS, ma'am, is only 74% funded. On September 15, 2015, in Breitbart Wire Service, an article stated the bankrupt city of San Bernardino voted to become the first participant to dump CalPERS because their contribution to CalPERS would rise a whopping 61% over the next 5 years. To play catch up, Glendale contribution will also rise increasingly significantly. As more cities and local districts bail out of CalPERS, this insolvent program, pension contribution will raise. Rates will rise even faster for remaining participants, and what could become and result in a death spiral. Council members, will our city manager again tonight state Glendale CalPERS pension system is the most affordable, most conservative pension plan around when the facts refute the statement? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohill. Next speaker is Don Margolin.
Mayor, City Council, welcome back. Well-deserved time off. You deserved it. I'm here about the news racks. I'm Don Margolin. I live in 1566 Midway Street, Glendale, 91208, Verdugo Woodlands. And I've never really explained my job and why I come here all the time. My job is I'm considered the rack master, meaning I maintain the news racks when there's a problem. So if the community development department sends a notice to the LA Weekly, they notify me and I correct it. I went to Jack in the Box on Glen Oaks on Thursday. I saw news racks that was deplorable. I picked it up, I took it to the warehouse, and I replaced it on Friday. I do maintain the news racks when they need to be. The Community Development Department wants to raise our fees 115% this year to $121. If we want to add a new news rack, they want to charge $242 each. I have a flyer that you should all have, and it shows that in Pasadena, instead of charging $121, they charge $11.43. Last year, they were $11.42, so they raised a penny, not raising from $52 last year to $121 this year. If you look at the second page of my handout, it shows the city of Los Angeles, and for a news rack to be replaced on the street, they want $21.69, not $121 or a new news rack at $242. I know you have a budget, and I know the money would be helpful, but I don't think the newspapers are the ones to go after. We can't afford it. And I think that's something that most people agree. Newspapers aren't doing as well as they did when we were young, and it's a different time now, and we really can't afford to pay that kind of money. Why can't we go from $52 or stay at $52 or maybe go up 10%? Why does it have to go 115%? It doesn't seem fair. And being a homeowner in Glendale, in Verdugo Woodlands, and I take care of my house, I painted it, I don't water it all now, so I try to do the right thing. But is the city doing the right thing by gouging us this much money? It doesn't seem fair, and I don't know if it's under good conscience to charge us this much money. So I would like you to consider putting this on the agenda and voting on a reasonable price to charge us, which $121 per news rack is not reasonable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Margolin. Next speaker is Priscilla Kasha.
Good evening. My name is Priscilla Cascia. I'm an attorney. I'm here with my mother, Betsaida Castillo. My family and I have lived in Glen Oaks Canyon since 1974, over 40 years. We own 3 houses in the canyon. My sister and I attended all Glendale local public schools, Glen Oaks Elementary, Wilson Junior High, and Glendale High School. We're heavily invested in this community. When we were young, we always played at Glen Oaks Park and rode our bikes through the canyon and always felt safe. Now my mother's 80 years old and walks in the neighborhood as much as possible for exercise. She looks forward to this diversion every day. We love smelling the fresh air and seeing neighbors walk the canyon. We are worried about the proposal to expand Shoal Canyon landfill because of the many negative environmental and health effects that are described in the EIR. Having the canyon changed into a polluted place would severely impact our ability to breathe and be outside. My mother wouldn't be able to do the exercise that her doctor tells her is critical to stay healthy. Also, property values would plummet, similar to what we are seeing now in Porter Ranch due to the Aliso Canyon gas leak. Like Porter Ranch, here a public service is located in a very close proximity to a huge residential area. Methane gas can leak from a garbage dump, causing serious potential hazards and resulting in huge liability to the city if something were to go terribly wrong. This would be personally devastating for us. Please do what you can to minimize the impacts of the landfill and do not expand it. Specifically, we request that the landfill be used only for Glendale residents and specifically Glen Oaks Canyon residents. By doing this, you will delay having to look for an alternate site for Glendale's own trash disposal needs at unknown costs in the future. We want to put this off for future generations and avoid being in the same position we are now. Please do not let other cities use the site for monetary compensation. The environment and our health take precedence over any amount of money. Glen Oaks Canyon is truly a special place. We really don't want it to change. There are over 2,000 residents in the canyon, and we all currently enjoy the physical beauty of the surrounding environment. Thank you for your attention to this important matter.
Thank you. Audrey Zarokian.
Hi, I'm Audrey Zarokian, a Glendale resident. I am opposed to the landfill expansion for many reasons, but one of the main being that the continual use of the land for waste disposal is against the Joint Powers Agreement, signed into effect in 1959. The Joint Powers Agreement states the following: counties' rights to use city property shall be for 17 years from the effective date of the conditional use permit, or until such property has served its purposes and shall have been completely filled as herein specified, whichever first occurs, whereupon all rights of the district and county shall terminate. Well, folks, 17 years, which occurred first, has come and gone, and the land at Shoal Canyon is still being used for dumping. The agreement also states, and I quote, "The city does hereby agree that it will forever use all of the property described in Exhibits A and B hereof for park and recreational purposes for the benefit of the public." Residents of Glendale have been waiting for the promise made by the city to its people. In exchange for filling their beautiful canyon and creeks with trash from 8 different cities, they would, after 17 years, receive the gift of recreation areas and public parks. However, all they have received is continued dumping of waste, a towering mountain of trash in their backyard. The defining peak of Glendale now as it looms over all of Glendale, noticeable as far out as Griffith Observatory, Forest Lawn, the 134 freeway, from the high-rises in downtown Glendale, and it just keeps on growing. In the last few months alone, it's grown well over 25 feet, and that's not even the maximum height that is currently permitted to grow. And here we are today, pleading for you to prevent an expansion that will allow the dump to grow an additional 180 feet in height. The agreement also goes on to state, the city agrees that all of the revenues received by it pursuant to this agreement shall be used for the construction, operation, and maintenance of park and recreation facilities. 55 years worth of revenue going into a fund for the construction of parks and recreation areas for public use at Shoal Canyon. Well, may we get some transparency here, please? Who is in charge of this fund? And we are all hoping this fund is still growing as it should be, as the agreement stipulates, and will soon be used to build some magnificent recreation areas which will increase all of our property values as opposed to diminishing them. All of you have a crucial decision to make in the coming weeks, or in this case, as you had mentioned, in the coming months. One that will define your legacy and lead your career, a decision that none of us voters will ever forget. Each and every time we receive our ballots, we will remember your decision on this particular matter. Will you, Council Member Ms. Friedman, Ms. Devine, Mr. Garpetian, keep kicking the can down the road, or will you be the leader that stands out of the crowd, that chooses to stand up for the city of Glendale, to do the right thing, and keep this the jewel city, or will you allow it to become known as the dump city instead? Mayor Ara Najarian spoke at a city council meeting just a few months ago regarding his reasons for opposing the 710 freeway expansion. In that speech, he said the following, and I quote, "The tunnel is outdated. It's a dinosaur. We're fighting against it for the lives of children. The AQMD has told us that the cancer risk of that tunnel is 15 times what is acceptable." End of quote. The mayor went on to say, quote, "This doesn't affect every single resident of Glendale, but I've always seen Glendale as a leader, as a regional leader, and this is what part of our leadership involves, standing up for what's right, fighting for what's right, spending some money, yes." End of quote. The reasons he was in opposition of the 710 freeway expansion are the very reasons we, residents of Glendale and of neighboring communities, are against the continual use of Shoal Canyon as a dump and against expansion of this dump. We hope that each and every one of you, representatives of the residents of Glendale, our voices, our eyes and ears, act according to our wishes and choose to continue to be leaders, innovators, and to stand up for what's right, and to quote our mayor, spend some money. Yes. Thank you.
Sharon Landon.
Is that David Warren?
No.
Okay.
See what happens when everyone's shouting? Sharon Landon?
My name is Sharon Landon. My husband and I have been homeowners in Glendale for over 25 years. I oppose the certification of the draft environmental impact report for Shoal Canyon landfill. Let me tell you one reason why. There are instances where it reads like a position paper in favor of the dump expansion instead of an objective analysis of the actual impact. For example, in section 11.5.2 on air quality, it states that no expansion would result in the same emissions of criteria pollutants since we will have the same amount of waste hauled to the landfill. It goes on to state that in the long term, not expanding would result in the greater emissions of criteria pollutants which comes from trucks, since the closure would result in waste being hauled longer distances. What it doesn't state is that these criteria pollutants would become regional and dispersed rather than localized in our community. Instead, it implies that with the landfill closure, our community would be exposed to more harmful pollutants. It also doesn't state that with the closure of the dump, the emission of the very fine particles that work their way into our lungs would be significantly reduced in our area. Much of the particulate matter comes from the dumping and moving of trash. This brings me to one of the reasons why I'm against the actual dump expansion. The DEIR concludes that the expansion would result in significant adverse air quality and emit very serious criteria pollutants and particulate matter that cannot be mitigated. According to the impact report, criterion pollutants reduce the body's ability to transport oxygen to vital organs and tissues. They harm the cardiovascular and central nervous systems. They reduce pulmonary function, cause cellular changes, and affect the immune system, reproductive system, and developmental systems. The particulate matter damages the lung tissue, exacerbates lung diseases, and could cause respiratory diseases. They can even enter the bloodstream. For a person like myself who suffers from asthma, I am very concerned. And what about the children who attend the elementary school in Glen Oaks Canyon? The children are there 6 to 8 hours a day for 9 months out of the year. This school serves not only Glen Oaks Canyon, but Chevy Chase Canyon children and children that live beyond the Chevy Chase and Glen Oaks Boulevard border. One cannot control which way the wind blows. These pollutants could affect not only Shoal Canyon, but Chevy Chase Canyon, West Pasadena, South La Cañada, and Eagle Rock. The impact report used data from air monitors that are 4 and 7 miles away. However, it did not include the data from the air monitors at Lower Shoal Canyon. I know this dump is a cash cow for Glendale, but this landfill has the potential of becoming a huge financial liability if health and safety issues are not considered. Eventually, the dump has to close. There's a finite amount of space up there. The bigger the dump, the more expensive it will be to close and maintain. It also comes at a huge cost to the image and reputation of the city. Burbank closed its landfill when it was much smaller than ours. Do we want the dump to be our most prominent feature like Puente Hills? A landfill is a big deal. It is a huge contributor to land and air pollution. Instead of just listening to the city managers and financial gurus, look at all perspectives. Listen to outside experts, study landfills. But most of all, listen to your residents. We elected you because you live here. We trusted you to put our health and safety first. I urge you to have the vision to think long-term for Glendale. Glendale has done its share. We've let other cities dump in our backyard since 1961. Don't let your legacy be one of putting money and political careers before the health and safety of your neighbors. Don't seek to expand the dump. Start planning for its closure. And like Audrey says, don't kick the can down the road. Thank you.
David Lara. David Lara here.
Is that me now?
That's you.
To the leaders of the City of Glendale, thank you for allowing me to speak. I live in the Eagle Rock, Pasadena section. My family has owned property on North Avenue 66, literally blocks away from the landfill area since 1957. I recently, in fact, raised the existing house and built a new one for my brother and wife and his wife to live in, and I live in the basement. I want to just say that, and I can't use the language that all of these people are using. What I do want to say is that this needs to be closed as outlined in the original design. It needs to be closed now. And basically, what I want to say is that those hundreds of trucks going up there and traveling through our neighborhood are releasing, I mean, the trucks are not sealed in any way, are releasing particles and trash and plastic and gases all the time as they're traveling down 134, up the hill, and then eventually they're turning it over. There's plumes that are going into the air, and it circles, not a big area, but enough of us are being impacted by that plume daily. It's time to close that dump, as per agreed so long ago. And I don't have any way of affecting your election, so I just come here as a good neighbor asking that you do the right thing and close the dump. Just no expansion, nothing else. Let's just start planning for the closure immediately. Thank you for your time.
Jerry Rankin. Okay, I'm calling the names and the speakers can't hear because everyone's clapping. So, Jerry Rankin.
I'm Jerry Rankin, live at Hollister Terrace, and I think that this is one of the best city councils we've ever had. You've been hearing a lot of passion, and I think the anger is directed at the landfill. It's not directed at you. I believe that you will come to a good solution for the landfill. And I really am impressed that you are delaying your work to go over our comments. And I was really worried that those comments would not be analyzed by you guys and the staff and made public before you actually made the decision to deal with the landfill and the EIR. But you're doing the right thing. Thank you. I do have something that I wrote down, so I'm gonna read part of it. We've been assured by several of you on the City Council that should the environmental impact report be approved, it does not necessarily follow that expansion of the landfill would occur. That is, expansion over the currently permitted capacity. An approved EIR would simply be fallback insurance in our back pockets if no better remedy for handling waste should materialize in the next few years. We don't see it that way. An approved EIR is an open door inviting the city to use the expansion alternative presented in the EIR. With it, there will be little incentive for city staff to pursue any other alternative, no matter how beneficial it might be. But I want you and the City Council to put pressure on them to really honestly look at the other alternatives. Burying waste in the ground may have been the way to do it 200 or 2,000 years ago. It's obsolete in the 21st century. I am certain there are viable alternatives. The most promising of them is plasma technology, which is already up and running in several European countries. Plasma technology, I've been told, was first developed by JPL engineers over in Pasadena and La Cañada. Plasma technology is the wave of the future. Non-polluting, turning waste into energy without any toxins escaping into the air or seeping into the ground. I've been told that state regulations will not allow communities in California to use plasma technology for waste disposal. The reason for this wrong-headed governmental proscription seems to be that the regulations simply have not been updated to reflect current waste disposal science in today's world. Perhaps the failure to keep current with modern science is not simply due to indolence or apathy. There may be a political aspect to it. We understand that the city has in the past attempted to encourage the state to modernize these regulations, thus opening the way for cities like Glendale to use plasma technology. I believe all of us here would promise to do whatever we can to support the city in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Weissman.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, City staff, and the public. My name is Bill Weissman from beautiful far north Glendale. I actually hadn't planned on speaking tonight, but I heard some items that were discussed earlier today that I was hoping I could clarify. Before I get to that, though, I just want to echo what the previous speaker said, that I think it's very important that we as a city do everything we can to get the government of California to fast track these technologies that are in use in Japan and use in Europe. We are so far behind the times in this that it would really be helpful if California could enter the 21st century in terms of permitted waste disposal technology. That being said, now to change the subject completely. Does anybody know here what the most powerful microwave transmitter is in the state of California? It's Deep Space Station 14 at the Goldstone Tracking Station in the Mojave Desert. And while I am not an expert on radio frequency issues or the health effects of microwave radiation, I did work at JPL for 17 years, and when I started there, I spent my first 3 years in the Deep Space Network. And the Deep Space Network is the organization that operates the giant antennas that are out at Goldstone and several other places around the world near Madrid and Spain, and there's a third set of tracking stations in Australia. In order to communicate with a spacecraft that's out beyond the orbit of Pluto, you need to pump a lot of energy into your radio signal. And the reason is there is an inverse square law in physics that the effect of radiation diminishes as you get further and further away from the source. And so what Councilmember Friedman said was absolutely correct, that you may very well be getting more microwave radiation by holding a cell phone next to your ear, even though it's only transmitting at a microwatt level, than if you're 100 yards away from a cellular antenna on a hillside. Now that antenna is transmitting at a much higher power level, but your distance from it is what insulates you from any negative health effects. And there is no denying the huge power of microwave radiation. The antenna that I was speaking of at Goldstone transmits with an effective power of 100 kilowatts, which is a huge amount of energy. And that energy is focused into a beam called a maser. A maser is the equivalent of a laser, except with microwaves instead of light. It's coherent, it's all the same frequency. And if a bird or an airplane or something like that flies low enough through the beam when that antenna is transmitting, kaboom. However, by the time that signal gets all the way out to the orbit of Pluto, it is diminished down to such a tiny, tiny power level that extremely powerful and sensitive receivers are needed to receive that signal. So one of the things that never seems to get discussed in all these discussions regarding wireless telecommunication facilities and microwave towers is the power levels. We all know that these devices, including our cell phones, and including devices like the Wi-Fi router that's up on the wall right here, those devices all are transmitting in the microwave frequency bands, but it's really the power level that's important, and that never gets discussed. You didn't hear power levels being brought up at any of the brouhaha earlier this evening regarding wireless telecommunication facilities. And I don't really know how many scientists or whatever agree that it's, a danger or a health hazard. From what I've seen in the literature, that doesn't seem to be all that plausible to me. And I do think that it's appropriate when somebody comes up and they're ranting about, the danger caused by cell phone technology, to have their cell phone go off has got to be the most amazing example of hypocrisy in real life that I've seen in these chambers recently. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Let's see. Eileen Hattrick.
Good evening, and I also want to thank you for listening to all of us, and I know it's getting late, so I'll make it brief. I am also not a Glendale resident. I am from Eagle Rock, and I would like to say just a few things about the expansion. It's been clarified so in such an articulate way through all the folks that got up here, all the reasons why this really needs to be considered, and probably not even considered, I should say. But I do want to speak regarding Eagle Rock in Los Angeles. First of all, our city council rep, Jose Huizar, is very much opposed to the expansion. He's gone on record and he spoke to groups, and I think you're probably very aware of that. And I think he's looking at the science behind what is happening to the air pollution. And I also want to bring up the point that right down the hill from the dump site is a very big, very well-used park. It's the Eagle Rock Recreation Center. And the Eagle Rock Recreation Center is one of the pristine parks in Los Angeles. I asked the staff how many students go there, how many kids use the park, how many kids and families every week, and I was told probably about 1,000. They have a daycare center. They have tennis courts that face the dump site. They have 3 huge fields that are used all the time. And this is, because we know the air is compromised, this is really something to consider. There's also a school that uses the park every day. It's a middle school that uses it because they don't have a yard themselves. It's a charter school. So that park is used extensively, and this is something that really has to be considered. One of the last points I'd like to make is I think your city manager, I would hope, in the future would bring to these meetings some thoughts about alternatives, because what we're hearing is just constantly defensive notion of why we should keep this idea of an expansion. But it seems like if we could hear some clinical, logical alternatives to the expansion, Mr. Ochoa, I think that would be very, very helpful. I don't think the citizens of Glendale need to come up with those alternatives because they may have to be looked at. I think probably the city manager should. So I would highly recommend that in the future meetings we hear some alternatives that can be looked at by the city council. And again, thank you very much.
Juan Gutierrez.
Good evening, members of the City Council. I won't take up much of your time. Already plenty of my neighbors have spoken on this issue of the landfill expansion. I just wanted to take a moment to mention, I wanted to express the disappointment with the fact that this vote is even coming up at all. It's disappointing that so soon after our governor went to the Paris climate talks as an example of what an environmentally conscious society should look like, of an ambassador for a forward-thinking society, that we're even considering whether or not to expand this landfill well beyond the life that was originally agreed to by the citizens of this city. It's discouraging that at the same time that the SoCal Gas Company is scrambling to cut off a massive leak into our atmosphere, we're asking ourselves whether or not to add to that noxious emission. It's disappointing to the point of being depressing that instead of proposing forward-thinking solutions to waste management, the best proposal that our city's leadership can come up with is to dig a deeper hole. It would be encouraging to see proposals that reflect the kind of future that we want to see for our city and our planet. We want brave, bold steps towards this future, not more of the same. Thank you so much for your time.
Jamshid Hassanzadeh.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jamshid Hassanzadeh. I also speak against the expansion. I'm a geologist, researcher, and college professor. From Dr. Clarence Hall's lecture on the Shoal Canyon landfill, I learned that the landfill has been built with no liner, based on the assumption that the bedrock is solid granite. I came to this meeting to alert and warn the City Council members that the bedrock is intensely fractured and permeable and not solid, and of the hazardous consequences with the current assumption. What is a solid granite? Solid granite is what is used as the kitchen countertop. You cannot find such granite in these mountains because our area is situated in a fault zone. The bedrock is crushed up because of prolonged tectonic history, means fault activity. I would be happy to show you the area. I frequently hike in these hills and mountains and take my students to the granite exposures for showing the evidence of tectonic activity. The fractured nature of the granitic bedrock of the Verdugo Hills is easily seen anywhere that the granite is exposed at the Earth's surface. For example, in natural outcrops and the road cuts. So many places we can see the crushed up granite. So the crucial message is that the bedrock of the dump is highly permeable due to its fractured nature. And an absence of a liner means that the liquids percolating through the waste can easily penetrate the bedrock and contaminate the groundwater with carcinogens, heavy metals, and other hazardous chemicals. Expanding this defective landfill without a liner is wrong because the bedrock is not solid and, in fact, highly permeable. We all should be concerned about amplifying the damage from the present landfill. The wise thing to do is to stop the expansion until a thorough investigation by an impartial and able consultant is conducted. Our area, fortunately, has so many academic centers, from GCC to Occidental College to Caltech and others. So many scientists in the area, in the field of environmental concerns, live close by, and they can be consulted with almost no cost. Thank you.
Alan Mallory.
I live in Glendale. I love Glendale. There's so many great things here. We've got DreamWorks, we've got the Americana, we've got Walt Disney Imagineering, we've got headquarters for Baskin Robbins and Nestle, LegalZoom, a big tech company just brought in, has big offices here. People move here because our schools are better than Los Angeles. We have great parks, libraries. And from somebody who also moved here from Los Angeles, when you call the police in Glendale, they come. We have a lot of great things to be proud of here in Glendale, and so I really don't want to see it spoiled by having it become known as the place with the toxic landfill. We have a chance to participate in the new Rim of the Valley Park, running along the whole rim of Los Angeles and other hilltops in Los Angeles, and we need to get rid of the black eye that we have with our landfill up there. People have been talking to you about all the problems with the air pollution, the water pollution, and everything. And, right now everyone's really conscious of Porter Ranch, and they wonder how Porter Ranch happened. Well, Porter Ranch happened because they ignored a challenging problem. The landfill's not going to go away. And all of us people here are not going to go away. And our vocal neighbors in Eagle Rock, Pasadena, and other surrounding communities are not going away either. We need for our city council to be very brave and step up to the challenge and stop the expansion and begin to phase out the landfill. While we can do it now on our own terms before we have a lot of protests from around the area and we have to spend money on lawyers or things, if we can just make a plan ourselves and be grown-ups and say it's time to shut this down and move ahead with the future. I think it will be the best thing for all of our children and grandchildren who want to stay in Glendale because it's such a great town. Thank you.
And then there's the card from Marlon or Martin, who lives on East Lomita. He must have left. Okay, I don't have any other cards for oral communications. We'll close oral communications. Thank everyone for coming forward and expressing your opinion. Sure.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming. That's what's great about Glendale and Eagle Rock. But people come out and they're vocal and articulate. And
I'm sorry, you keep looking at us when you say Los Angeles or Eagle Rock. We're Glendale residents.
No. I'm looking generally in the room, not to anyone in particular.
No, like a microwave.
To you mean?
Both of us as we came in.
No, let's.
No. I'm sorry. I'm not looking at. Believe me, I'm not looking at anyone in particular. I know that there are people here. The gentleman behind you is from Los Angeles, and I've met him before, so I knew he was from Los Angeles. So I was kind of glancing in that direction.
Really sensitive.
And I welcome people from Los Angeles. So thank you.
Okay, let's get on your final comments, Ms. Friedman. We need to move on.
From Glendale, I want to thank everyone for coming, everybody. And the reason that the city manager is putting this off is to look into some of those solutions. So I just wanted people to know that. And at some point this will come back, and I hope you all come back too. And I just wanted to say, because somebody brought it up about answering emails, we don't have staff to answer emails for us. Some cities do. So I've been going through and reading every single email and every single word of them, and that takes time. And I've been responding as I can to them, as quickly as I can. And if I haven't responded to yours yet, I'm sorry. I may have read it and not responded. I may not have read it yet and will respond. I just want you to know that every single email that I get on any subject, I always read, and I do that myself, not with any staff. So I just wanted to let you all know that. No one's being ignored, believe me. And I think I speak for my colleagues, too, that we've all been receiving the emails and reading them all. Thanks.
Okay. Something to say. Please be short. Yes, Mr. Carpenter.
Should I say aye again? Okay. I just want to thank you all for being here tonight as well. As far as the emails go, Mr. Espinosa, I just checked all my emails. I did not receive one from you, but I can check my. No, that's fine. That's fine. No. It's all fine. It's all good. It's all good. We are trying to respond to everybody. I responded to almost all of them until yesterday. I received a few emails today. I didn't respond, but I came to your homeowners associations meeting because we all care. It's not that our city is your city and your city is our city. So we all live in this city. We care. I have 3 children. We all know what's going on. So bear with us, and we are trying to do the right thing. That's all.
We have new business?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes,
That's what I was going to ask for, the new business. We have 2 items.
I would like to move that the City Council in the City of Glendale hereby authorizes the City Attorney to file a writ of mandate in the 2nd District Court of Appeal to seek review of the trial court's ruling rendered on January 7, 2016, denying the City's motion to preclude discovery of extra recorded evidence in the matter of Glendale Coalition for Better Government versus City of Glendale, case number BS 153253. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine?
Yes.
Friedman?
Yes.
Garpetian?
Yes.
Sinanian? Mayor Najarian?
Yes. Councilmember Devine.
Yes, I would like to move that pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Point 1A5, the city attorney's appointment of Michael R. Grant as a principal assistant city attorney for the city of Glendale is hereby approved, and further that a written copy of this motion be transcribed, certified, and delivered by the city clerk to the office of the Civil Service Commission of the city of Glendale as a written statement required by Article 24, Section 5, Subsection 2 of the Charter.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Sinanian, Mayor Najarian.
Yes. Mr. Garbattian.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that outstanding claims in government tort claim filed by Mr. Michael Sarian be compromised and resolved for the full and complete sum of $168,000, and the same is hereby approved and accepted, and the finance director is authorized to issue a warrant in said sum payable to the law offices of Joseph Knemian for delivery by the city attorney upon the execution of the settlement and release agreement.
Seconded. Roll call, please.
Council members Devine,
Yes.
Friedman,
Yes.
Garpetian,
Yes.
Sinanian, Mayor Najarian.
Yes. And we will adjourn tonight's meeting upon proper motion in the memory of Ed Hunt and Elizabeth Doyle. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Seconded. We are adjourned.